The first thing Barry Allen felt was the wrong kind of quiet. Not silence. Not peace. More like the world had stopped trusting the rules. The Speed Force was always loud in its own way. A steady pull, a clear direction, a promise that if Barry ran, the universe would answer him. Now it was a knot. A tight, twisting knot around his chest. Barry was already moving when the sky tore open. Blue-white lightning cracked across the clouds like someone had ripped a zipper. The air turned sharp and hot. The street below flashed in the light of it. Barry dropped out of the tear like a thrown stone. He hit the asphalt on one knee, slid, and dug his fingers into the ground to keep from tumbling into a crowd. He looked up. People. Lots of people. A line of police vans. Barricades. Signs held high. Angry shouting from one side. Fearful shouting from the other. A protest. And right at the edge of it, a small moment that was about to become a tragedy. A metal barrier was tipping. Someone had climbed it. Or pushed it. Barry did not have time to decide. He only had time to act. He moved. To everyone else, the barrier was falling. To Barry, it was falling like a slow leaf. He caught it, set it down, and pushed it back upright. He guided the person away from it. Gentle hands, no panic. Then a bottle flew. Then a second one. Then someone threw a rock. Barry's eyes flicked across the scene. He saw the path of each object. He saw where it would land. He saw who it would hurt. He took a single breath, and the world became a list of problems he could solve. He blurred through the crowd. A bottle that would have smashed into a woman's face vanished midair and reappeared on the ground, unbroken. A rock that would have hit a police officer's helmet tapped down into Barry's palm like a caught baseball. Barry placed it carefully on a ledge like it was evidence. He could not help it. That was how his brain worked. Fix the danger, preserve the facts. Barry's suit sparked with tiny arcs of lightning. The air around him shimmered with heat and motion. Someone screamed, "He's with them!" Someone else yelled, "He's a mutant!" A third voice shouted, "He's an attack!" Barry flinched at the word mutant, not because he understood it yet, because he heard the fear behind it. Fear was always the same language. More people started to run. Barry raised his hands. Hey, I'm not here to..." A loud crack cut him off. A gunshot. Barry's head snapped toward it. The bullet had been aimed high, maybe as a warning, maybe as a threat. It did not matter. It was still a bullet. It still had a path. And at the end of that path was a teenager who had stepped out from behind a sign at the worst time. The teen's eyes were wide. His hands glowed faintly, like embers under skin. He looked like he had no idea what his body was doing. The bullet was already in the air. Barry ran. He was there before sound finished reaching the crowd. He did not grab the teen. He did not yank him hard. He simply put himself between the teen and the bullet. Then he vibrated. His body shifted just enough that the bullet passed through the space where his chest had been. The teen blinked. What? Barry tapped the boy's shoulder and guided him back, calm and quick. "You're okay. Stay down." The crowd did not see the bullet miss. They only saw a man made of lightning appear beside a mutant kid, and the fear in them got louder. Barry heard boots pounding, police moving, protesters surging. The fragile lines snapped. A stampede started. Barry's stomach turned cold. Stampedes killed people, not villains, not heroes. Regular people who fell and got crushed. Barry moved again. He became a blur at ground level, lifting fallen people up, moving them to the side, clearing paths like a living evacuation plan. He guided a woman and her stroller out of the crush. He caught a man's arm before he hit the pavement. He pulled a child out from under a sign that had toppled. He did it fast enough that most of them only felt a strange gust and then realized they were suddenly safe. But safe did not mean calm. The air was turning ugly with panic. You could taste it. Then the wind changed. The temperature dropped. A low rumble rolled in above the buildings, not like thunder from far away, but like a storm arriving with purpose. Barry glanced up. Clouds gathered too quickly, thick and gray, heavy. A woman floated down from above the street. slow and controlled, like the air itself was holding her. White hair, dark suit, eyes that looked tired of people hurting each other. She landed between the crowd and Barry, and the wind stopped pushing people. It was not magic. It felt like command. Her voice carried without shouting. Enough. The word was simple, but everyone heard it. The rain did not fall. It hovered in the air like the sky was deciding. Barry stared. He had fought gods. He had outrun disasters. But this was different. This was power being used to prevent the first punch, not win the last one. A man stepped out of the side street behind her. Shorter, broad, hands in a jacket, face hard, like stone that had learned to growl. Barry's eyes went to the man's hands. 3 metal claws slid out with a clean, brutal sound. Barry's whole body tightened, not because he was scared, because his instinct screamed, unknown threat, close range, lethal. The clawed man looked Barry up and down. "You smell like ozone." Barry swallowed. "Yeah, I get that a lot." The woman did not look away from Barry. "You need to come with us." Barry glanced at the crowd again. People were staring at him like he was a bomb that had not gone off yet. The glowing-handed teen was gone now, pulled into the chaos. Police were shouting into radios. Barry's mind ran faster than his legs. New world, new rules, fear around the word mutant, a storm woman, a claw man. And the Speed Force still felt wrong. Barry took a slow breath and kept his hands open. "Okay, but I'm not letting anyone here get hurt because of me." The clawed man snorted. "Good, because if they do, it gets complicated." The woman's eyes softened just a little, like she had noticed the same thing Barry had, that he had been saving people, not attacking them. "Come," she said again. "Now, before someone else makes a worse choice." Barry nodded. High above, far away from the street, in a quiet room filled with machines and a helmet with wires, Charles Xavier's eyes snapped open. His face was calm, but his voice was not. "There," he whispered. He felt it again. Not a mind, not a mutant signature. A storm of motion. A bright, impossible rhythm. Something that did not belong in this world. Xavier reached for the communicator. "Aurora," he said, steady. "Bring him home, carefully." The jet was quiet enough that Barry could hear his own thoughts. That was never a good sign. He sat strapped into a seat that felt built for someone else. Across from him, the clawed man Logan stared like he was waiting for Barry to do something stupid. The woman Aurora sat near the window, watching the clouds like she was listening to them. Barry tried to keep his breathing slow. He tried to keep his hands still. He failed at the second part. His fingers tapped the edge of the seat in a pattern that helped him think. Aurora noticed. "You are anxious." Barry gave a small smile. "Is it that obvious?" "It is not a crime," she said, "but it can lead to mistakes." Logan leaned forward a little. "So talk. Who are you?" Barry's mouth opened, then closed, because the truth was big, and big truths sounded like lies when you said them to strangers. "My name is Barry," he said at last. "Barry Allen." Logan's eyes narrowed. "That's it?" Barry glanced at the claws. "Would you like my middle name too?" Logan's mouth twitched like he almost smiled, but refused to give Barry the win. "Cute." Aurora's voice stayed calm. "He saved many people. I saw it." Logan shrugged. "So can a lot of things right before they bite you." Barry turned his head toward him. "I don't bite." Logan sniffed. "We'll see." Barry looked out the window. The world below was not his. The buildings were familiar shapes, but the feeling was different. Like the city carried an old bruise under its skin. Barry whispered more to himself than to them. "This isn't Central City." Aurora tilted her head. "Central City." Barry realized he had said too much. He rubbed his forehead. "It's where I'm from." Logan's stare sharpened. "You're not just from out of town. You're from somewhere else." Barry hesitated. Aurora's eyes stayed steady, not judging, just waiting. Barry chose honesty, but in small pieces. "I'm not sure how to explain it," he said, "but I was running. Something went wrong, and then I was there." Logan said, "Running." Barry nodded. "That's kind of my thing. Ororo studied him. "You're lightning." Barry looked down at his gloves. The suit was scuffed now. Small sparks still crawled along the seams like restless fireflies. "It comes with the running," Barry said. Logan leaned back, but his shoulders stayed tense. "You're a mutant." Barry blinked. "A what?" Ororo's gaze sharpened. "You do not know that word." Barry shook his head. "No. I mean, I can guess what it means from the crowd, but I don't know your world." Logan's eyes hardened. "If you're lying, you're very good at it." Barry sighed. "Trust me, if I were trying to lie, I'd do it with fewer awkward pauses." Ororo's lips lifted slightly. Not quite a smile. "There is humor in you." Barry spread his hands. "It's either that or panic." The jet began to descend. Barry felt the knot in his chest tighten again, like the Speed Force didn't like the direction they were going. He swallowed. Ororo spoke softly, but with weight. "We are going to a school." "A school?" Barry repeated. Logan snorted. "Sure, a school." Ororo did not glare at him, but the air shifted anyway, like a warning. "It is a place of safety." Barry nodded slowly. "Okay." The jet landed. Barry stepped out into open air that smelled like grass and clean stone. He saw a large mansion, old and strong, with wide steps and tall windows. It looked like the kind of place where people told ghost stories. But the feeling was not haunted. It was guarded. Barry heard movement in the trees. He saw shadows, people watching. Logan walked close behind him, like a dog walking beside a stranger it did not trust. Ororo led Barry inside. The hallway felt warm, lived in, like a home trying to stay a home in a world that wanted it to be a bunker. A man with blue fur and glasses stepped forward. Polite posture, careful smile. Barry's eyebrows jumped before he could stop them. The man held out a hand. "Henry McCoy, but most call me Beast." Barry blinked twice. "Okay, that's straightforward." Beast's smile widened. "We try." A younger man with a sharp jaw and a visor stood near the stairs. He looked like he had been born ready to give orders. His posture was soldier straight. His eyes moved over Barry like a checklist. Beast said, "Scott Summers." Scott nodded once. Not friendly, not rude. "You're the one who caused that energy spike." Barry raised a hand. "I didn't cause it on purpose." Scott's tone did not change. "I didn't say you did." Barry felt the knot tighten again. This guy did not hate him, but he did not trust him either. Behind Scott, a red-haired woman watched Barry like she could see the shape of his thoughts. Her eyes were kind, but intense. Beast noticed Barry noticing. Jean Grey. Jean gave a small nod. "Hello, Barry." Barry froze. "How did you—" Jean's gaze flicked to Ororo, then back. Lucky guess. Logan's grunt said he did not believe that for a second. A bald man in a wheelchair rolled forward from a side room. His face was gentle. His eyes were sharp. Something about him made the air feel quieter. Not empty, just focused. "Barry Allen," the man said. Barry's stomach dropped again. "Okay, everybody's doing that." The man's smile was calm. "I am Charles Xavier." Barry swallowed. "Professor X." The name slipped out before Barry could stop it. Then Barry winced, because he had no idea why he said it. Xavier did not react like he was offended. He reacted like he was interested. Scott's head turned sharply. "You've heard of him?" Barry raised both hands fast. "No. I mean, maybe?" He shook his head. "Sorry. My brain is doing weird things." Xavier's voice stayed warm. "It happens when one is frightened." "I'm not," Barry started, then stopped. "Okay, yeah, I'm a little frightened." Logan crossed his arms. "A little?" Barry glanced at the claws. "I'm trying to be polite." Beast cleared his throat gently. "Professor, perhaps we should proceed with caution. A medical evaluation, non-invasive." Barry pointed at Beast like he was grateful. "Yes, that. Non-invasive is my favorite kind of invasive." Scott's mouth tightened. We don't have time for jokes. Barry looked at Scott. Jokes are how I keep from breaking down. Scott stared at him for a beat. Then he looked away, like he had no response that would be useful. Xavier nodded once. Henry? A checkup. Then we will speak. Beast gestured down a hallway. This way. As they walked, Barry saw doors with names on them. He saw framed photos of groups of people, some human-looking, some not, smiling, training, standing together like a family. Barry's throat tightened, because he recognized that look, the look of people who had been through too much and decided to stick together anyway. They entered a bright lab filled with machines that hummed softly. Beast moved with careful confidence. Please sit, and if anything makes you uncomfortable, say so. Barry sat. He watched Beast's hands. He watched the machines. Heart rate, Beast murmured, checking a screen. Remarkable. You are not a sprinter. You are a sustained anomaly. Thanks, Barry said. I think, Beast chuckled. We can call it a compliment. Aurora stood by the door, calm as a lighthouse. Logan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes never leaving Barry. Scott stood just behind a glass panel, like he wanted distance but refused to look away. Jean stood near the back of the room, quiet, listening. Beast placed a sensor near Barry's wrist. This will measure your energy output. Barry's skin prickled as a faint blue glow danced under the sensor. The screen spiked. Beast's eyebrows rose. Oh. Scott's voice came through the speaker. How bad? Beast kept his tone measured. Not bad, unprecedented. Barry tried to keep his voice light. That sounds like a fancy version of bad. Jean's eyes narrowed slightly. It's loud. Barry looked at her. My energy? Jean nodded. Not like noise. Like presence. Like a storm that thinks. Barry swallowed. That's the speed force. Scott repeated the word like it was suspicious on principle. Speed force. Barry nodded. It's hard to explain. It's a kind of energy field. It's connected to motion, time, everything that moves. Beast leaned in, fascinated. Time. Logan pushed off the wall. He said the word. There. That's the problem. Barry sighed. Time is always the problem. Xavier entered the lab quietly, like he had been there the whole time. Beast stepped back, respectful. Professor. Xavier's eyes rested on Barry. May I speak with you privately? Barry looked around. Aurora. Logan. Jean. Beast. Scott behind glass. Barry nodded. Sure. Xavier glanced at the others. Give us a moment. Scott hesitated. Xavier's gaze did not harden, but it carried weight. Scott left. Aurora touched Logan's arm lightly. Logan grunted, but he stepped out. Jean lingered a half-second longer, then followed. Beast shut down the most sensitive machines and left too, humming as if he was already thinking through equations. The door closed. Barry and Xavier were alone. Barry exhaled. Okay. Here's the thing. I'm not trying to cause trouble. Xavier nodded. I believe you. Barry blinked. That was fast. Xavier's voice stayed gentle. I have met many who claim they want peace while preparing violence. You do not feel like that. Barry's eyes narrowed. You can read minds. Xavier held up a hand. I can, but I do not do so without consent when I can avoid it. Barry stared at him. Then Barry nodded once. Okay, you can look, but please don't dig up things I'm not ready to talk about. Xavier's expression softened. Agreed. Barry swallowed. Go ahead. Xavier's eyes focused. The air did not change. There was no glowing, no sound, but Barry felt something like a warm hand on the edge of his thoughts. Not grabbing, not forcing, just asking. Barry let him in. Xavier's face changed in small ways. A tightening around the eyes. A sadness that came and went quickly. Barry felt exposed for a second, like he was standing in bright light with no shadows to hide in. Then Xavier eased back. He looked tired now, but kind. You carry grief, Xavier said softly. And guilt. Barry's throat tightened. Yeah. Xavier continued. Careful. You have saved many, but you fear the times you could not. Barry looked down at his hands. I'm good at being fast. I'm not always good at letting things be. Xavier nodded slowly. This world will test that in you. Barry looked up. What is this world? Xavier spoke clearly. Simple truth, no decoration. A world that fears those who are different. We call them mutants, people born with abilities. Many are hunted. Barry's jaw clenched. For being born. Xavier nodded. Yes. Barry's hands curled into fists. Lightning sparked along his knuckles, then faded as he forced himself to breathe. Xavier watched him with calm attention. You are powerful. Barry let out a short laugh with no humor. That's one word for it. Xavier's voice stayed steady. Power draws fear. Fear draws control. Control draws cruelty. Barry swallowed. So what do you do? Xavier smiled faintly. We protect. We teach. We try to build trust. Barry leaned forward. And if trust fails? Xavier's eyes flicked, just once, toward the door where Logan had been. Then we endure. And we choose our actions carefully. Barry sat back. I want to go home. Xavier nodded. Of course. Barry continued. Honest. But if people are getting hunted here, I'm not just going to leave and pretend I didn't see it. Xavier's gaze warmed. That choice says much about you. Barry hesitated. But I also know something. If I run around fixing everything fast, people might blame mutants more. They might call it proof that mutants are dangerous. Xavier's eyes sharpened with respect. You think ahead. Barry shrugged slightly. I'm a forensic scientist. I live in consequences. Xavier's lips curved. Then you will understand why Scott is cautious. Barry nodded. He's got the team leader with anxiety vibe. Xavier chuckled softly. He has carried many burdens. The door opened. Scott returned first, controlled and stiff. Aurora followed, calm. Beast came with a tablet and a pen already scribbled full. Logan came last, like he was annoyed that the room had walls. Scott looked to Xavier. Well? Xavier nodded once. He is not lying about being from another world. Beast's eyes widened. Truly? Barry raised a hand. Hi. Yes. Sorry. It's a lot. Logan's voice was low. That doesn't mean he's safe. Barry pointed at Logan. Fair. Scott stepped forward. Then we treat this like we treat any unknown. Careful. Structured. No surprises. Barry's mouth opened. I mean, I'm basically a surprise shaped like a person. Scott cut him off. No surprises. Barry closed his mouth, then nodded. Okay. Beast's fingers tapped the tablet. His energy pattern does not match any mutant signature we have cataloged. It is different. It spikes and settles like a heartbeat. Jeanne tilted her head, eyes distant. It's like he's connected to something that is not here, like a door that didn't close all the way. Barry's chest tightened. That's what it feels like. Aurora looked at Barry. You can stay here. For now. Logan added. But if you hurt kids. Barry raised both hands quickly. I'm not hurting kids. Logan's eyes were hard. If. Barry met his gaze. If I start losing control, you stop me. Deal. Logan blinked, surprised by the directness. Beast let out a low whistle. That is rare honesty. Scott did not soften. But he did not push either. We will assign you a room. You will not leave the grounds without telling us. Barry exhaled. Yeah, okay. Reasonable. Xavier's tone became formal, like he was setting the rules that kept a house from becoming a cage. You are our guest, Barry Allen. You may work with us, and we may work with you, but we will also observe. Barry nodded. That's fair. Jean watched Barry a moment longer. What do we call you? Barry hesitated. Because the name he used back home was tied to a life, a city, a symbol. He did not know if he wanted that symbol in a world that would use it as a reason to build bigger weapons. My name is Barry, he said again. That's enough for now. Scott accepted that with a nod. Ororo accepted it with a calm look. Beast accepted it with a curious smile, already thinking. Jean accepted it like she understood what the hesitation meant. Logan did not accept anything, but he stopped pushing for the moment. Barry stood. He offered his hand to Scott first. Scott looked at it, then took it, firm and quick. Then Barry offered his hand to Ororo. She took it with a quiet strength. Then Beast. Beast shook it enthusiastically, careful not to crush Barry's fingers. Barry glanced at Logan. Logan did not move. Barry shrugged. Maybe later. Logan grunted, which was not a yes but not a no. Somewhere far away, in a dark lab lit by pale screens, a man with a perfect smile watched grainy footage from a street camera. A blur of red. A flash of lightning. A man moving like physics had given up. Mr. Sinister tilted his head, delighted. "Oh," he murmured, "that is new." He tapped a key, sending a message to someone who did not like surprises. "Something has entered your little war," Sinister whispered, "and I would very much like to keep it." The first time Barry ran on the mansion grounds, he did it like he was testing ice on a lake. Carefully. He took one step, then another. Then he let himself move faster. Not full speed. Not even close. But enough that the air began to hum. Trees blurred. Grass became a green ribbon. The world sharpened into clean lines and choices. Barry's heart lifted for one sweet second. Then the knot in his chest pulled tight again. The Speed Force did not sing. It coughed. Barry slowed and stopped near a stone wall, breathing hard like he had just sprinted a mile. "That's not good," he muttered. Beast's voice came from behind him. "No, it is not." Barry turned. Beast stood there with a clipboard, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. Barry pointed. "Do you ever not have a clipboard?" Beast smiled. "It brings me comfort." Barry nodded. "Same. Mine is usually invisible, and in my head." Beast stepped closer, eyes bright. "May I ask you something? About your Speed Force?" Barry rubbed his neck. "Ask." Beast spoke quickly, like a kid who had been given permission to open a present. "If you are connected to it, but it is weaker here, could that mean it is not universal? Or could it mean this universe's constants differ? Or—" Barry held up both hands. "Okay, slow down. I'm the speed guy, but you're making me dizzy." Beast laughed. "Genuine. Apologies." Barry leaned back against the wall. "I think it's universal. It's just hard to reach, like I'm on the wrong radio station." Beast nodded, thoughtful. "Fascinating." Barry sighed. "Also terrifying." Beast glanced at his notes. "Scott will want to know you are not at full output." Barry's eyes narrowed. "He thinks that's good." Beast's smile faded. "He thinks it is safer." Barry looked out at the lawn, where he could see students in the distance, practicing with controlled bursts of power under supervision. Some were laughing. Some looked tense. All of them looked like they were trying. Barry swallowed. "I don't want to be another reason they're hunted." Beast's voice softened. "Then you must be careful." Barry's jaw set. "I can be careful and still help." Beast nodded. "Yes, that is the line we all walk." A sharp sound cut across the grounds. Not a scream. A warning siren. Barry's head snapped toward the mansion. Then his body moved before anyone gave an order. He was at the front steps in a blink. Scott was already there, visor on, posture locked. Ororo stood beside him, eyes narrowed toward the horizon. Jean held her fingers to her temple, listening to something no one else could hear. Logan was there too, as if he had been waiting for danger his whole life. Beast caught up seconds later, breathing like a normal person. Scott looked at Barry. "Stay behind us." Barry stared. "What?" Scott's voice stayed hard. "We don't know what this is." Barry's eyes flashed with irritation. "If it's danger, then I'm useful." Ororo lifted a hand slightly. Not to stop Barry, but to steady the moment. "Scott." Scott's jaw tightened. He spoke like he was forcing himself to be fair. "Fine, but you follow my calls." Barry nodded once, sharp. Deal. Jean's eyes opened wider. They're coming. Who? Barry asked. Jean's voice was tight. Machines. Big ones. Logan's claws slid out. Sentinels. Barry's stomach dropped. Because he did not know the word, but he knew the way Logan said it. Like an old nightmare. A shadow passed over the lawn. Then another. The trees shook as something heavy landed beyond the edge of the grounds. Barry saw metal through the branches, tall shapes, humanoid, cold. Their eyes glowed. Speakers crackled. A flat voice rolled out across the air like a public announcement. Mutant containment operation, active. Scott's teeth clenched. They're on our doorstep. Ororo's gaze hardened. Then we move. Barry's hands curled. Lightning danced between his fingers. He looked at the students near the training area. Kids. He swallowed hard. Okay, he whispered. No one gets hurt. The first sentinel stepped onto the lawn like it owned the earth. It was taller than a house. Its metal body looked smooth in places, armored in others. Its hands were shaped like tools designed to crush. Its head turned slowly, scanning. A second sentinel followed, then a third. They spread out as if they had practiced this 1,000 times. Scott's voice snapped into command mode. Ororo, cover. Jean, shield mines. Logan, flank. Beast, get the students inside now. Beast started moving, already calling for staff. Barry pointed at the nearest sentinel. What are these things? Logan growled, eyes locked on the machine. They catch mutants. Barry's skin went cold. Catch. Scott's voice was sharp. Barry. Evac. Civilians first. Barry nodded and vanished. He was across the lawn, guiding students inside before they even realized the danger had arrived. He did not grab them like objects. He moved them like you moved someone away from a speeding car, fast, but careful. One girl blinked and found herself behind a doorway. What? Inside, Barry said, gentle. Now. He raced back out. Ororo rose into the air, arms lifting. The sky darkened. Wind wrapped around the mansion like a shield. Jean stood on the steps, eyes closed, hands at her temples. A calm pressure spread outward, like a blanket over frightened minds. Students stopped screaming. They still looked scared, but they could think. Logan ran low through the grass, fast for a man his size, angling toward the sentinel's legs. Scott stepped forward, visor glowing. Stand down, Scott shouted. You are trespassing. The sentinel's head turned toward him, then toward Ororo, then toward the mansion. Its speaker crackled again. Mutant presence confirmed. Its eyes flared brighter. High-level energy anomaly detected. Barry's stomach tightened. It was looking for him. Scott snapped. Barry, stay moving. Don't let it lock on to you. Barry's voice came fast, from somewhere in the air. Yeah, that's already happening. A sentinel's hand opened, and a net fired out like a launched spider web. It wasn't rope. It was light and metal and something else, something designed to tighten around a body and shut powers down. Barry dodged. The net slammed into the ground, cracking it. Barry ran up the sentinel's arm, feet tapping metal like drumbeats. He reached the shoulder, planted his palms, and vibrated. His hands slid into the metal like it was water. Then he pulled. He yanked out a thick cable bundle, twisting and snapping it. The sentinel's arm jerked and went dead. Barry leapt away as the machine swiped with its other hand. Logan hit its ankle with a brutal slash, sparks spraying. The sentinel barely reacted. It lifted its foot to stomp. Barry moved again. He struck the sentinel's knee joint 100 times in a second, not hard enough to shatter everything, but precise enough to stress the system. The joint buckled. The sentinel stumbled. Scott fired a blast that slammed into its chest, forcing it back. Ororo called down a bolt of lightning that hit the sentinel's head like a hammer. Barry flinched from the brightness even though he had seen lightning 1,000 times. This was not his lightning. This was the skies. The sentinel shook, systems flickering. For a second, Barry thought, "We've got this." Then the sentinel's eyes changed. They narrowed. They adjusted, like a camera improving focus. Its head turned. Not toward Scott or Ororo. Toward Barry's blur. "Prediction mode active," the speaker said. Barry's blood ran cold. The machine raised its hand again, and the air in front of Barry shimmered. A field, not a wall. A trap. It wasn't trying to hit where Barry was. It was trying to hit where Barry would be. Barry swerved. The field snapped into place in his path. Barry barely avoided it, but he felt the edge brush his suit, and his speed hiccuped for a half second. Half a second was forever. He recovered and ran, heart pounding. "Scott!" Barry shouted. "It's predicting. I can see that." Scott fired again. "Ororo. Blind it." Ororo's wind slammed into the Sentinel's face like a hurricane. Rain whipped hard. Visibility dropped. Jean's voice came tight, strained. "There's something else. A signal. It's not just local control." Beast shouted from the doorway, shepherding students inside. "Remote coordination." Barry dashed back and grabbed a small metal shard from the lawn-broken Sentinel armor from Logan's strikes. He didn't think. He acted like he was at a crime scene. He pulled a small evidence bag from a lab kit Beast had left by the steps, shoved the shard inside, sealed it, and scribbled a label with a marker he found in his own belt pouch. Logan stared at him mid-fight. "Are you bagging robot parts right now?" Barry looked up, still moving. "Chain of custody." Logan snarled, half annoyed, half impressed. "You're insane." Barry tossed the bag to Beast without looking. Beast caught it like it was a prized artifact. "Thank you," Beast shouted, delighted in the worst possible moment. The second Sentinel moved in from the side, aiming not at the team. At the mansion doors, Barry's eyes widened. No. He ran. He hit the Sentinel's forearm, spun, and vibrated through its grip as it tried to grab him. He reached the machine's wrist and phasing cut the power line again. It adapted faster. Its hand shifted, plate slid, a clamp formed, snapping shut around Barry's forearm. Pain flashed. Not from crushing force Barry could handle that. From energy. The clamp pulsed, and Barry felt his connection to the speed force stutter like a skipped heartbeat. Barry gasped. His body slowed, not to normal human speed, but enough that the world stopped being syrup. Enough that the Sentinel's other hand could swing toward him. Logan launched himself upward, claws out, slashing the clamp. Sparks exploded. Barry ripped his arm free and stumbled back, shaking his hand like it was numb. Logan landed beside him, chest heaving. "You okay?" Barry swallowed. "Yeah. Just, that thing hurts in a way I don't like." Scott's voice snapped. "Barry, get out of its reach." Barry nodded, then vanished again, staying mobile. Jean's eyes snapped open. "Scott, it's looking for Barry more than us." Scott's jaw tightened. "Of course it is." Ororo's voice came like thunder. "Then we use that." She lifted both arms. The wind changed, not just strong, but shaped. It created a clear corridor across the lawn. A funnel. A path. Scott understood instantly. "Barry, run it through the corridor." Barry appeared beside Scott for half a second. "You want me to lure a building-sized murder robot?" Scott's face did not change. "Yes." Barry blinked. Then he nodded. "Okay, cool. Love that for me." Barry sprinted. He became a red-blue streak across the grass, lightning trailing behind him like a comet tail. The Sentinel's head snapped toward him. It charged. The ground shook with every step. Barry ran straight down Ororo's wind corridor, and the Sentinel followed, faster now, arms out like it could grab the air itself. Scott waited at the end of the corridor. He stood still until the last possible second. Then he fired. His blast hit the Sentinel's center mass and shoved it sideways directly into the thickest part of Ororo's storm. Lightning hit it again, and again, and again. The Sentinel staggered, systems flashing. Jean pressed her fingers to her temple, eyes squeezed shut. "I can feel its control signal there." She pointed, not at the Sentinel, at a small drone-like unit hovering far above, almost invisible in the rain. Beast's voice rose, excited and urgent. "A relay." Barry looked up. A tiny target. High up, fast-moving. Barry smiled grimly. Finally, something my size. He ran up the side of the mansion, feet slapping stone, using speed and friction like they were ladders. At the roofline, he launched himself into the air. He reached the drone. He phased through it just enough, then grabbed its core and yanked. The drone died in his hands. He landed back on the lawn in a skid, holding the broken relay like a trophy. "Relay down," Barry shouted. For a moment, the Sentinels' movements stuttered. They didn't stop, but they hesitated, like they had lost a piece of their brain. "Now," Scott yelled. The team hit together. Scott's blast forced one Sentinel's head back. Ororo's wind tore at its balance. Logan carved into its leg joints, brutal and precise. Barry struck the same joints at super speed, turning Logan's cuts into a failure point. The Sentinel fell to one knee. Barry vibrated again, sliding both hands deep into the machine's chest housing, and ripped out its main power core. The core sparked in his hands like a furious heart. Barry tossed it away, and Ororo's wind slammed it into the ground where it exploded harmlessly in wet dirt. The first Sentinel, damaged and blind, rose again anyway. It lifted a hand and aimed not at the team, at the tree line, at fleeing students. Barry's face went hard. No. He ran. He was between the Sentinel and the trees before the shot fired. The Sentinel launched a wide suppression blast meant to cover an area, not a point. Barry could not dodge it, so he did something else. He ran in a circle, so fast that the air turned into a wall. A spinning pressure barrier wrapped around the students like a dome, pushing the blast upward. The blast tore through the dome's top and dissipated into Ororo's storm. Barry's knees bent under the strain, but he held it, because a dome of air was easier than a funeral. The Sentinel adjusted again. It looked at Barry. Then it spoke with a new flat certainty. Target priority, energy anomaly, capture required. A hatch opened in its chest. Something launched out, small, fast, and sharp. A dart. Barry saw it. He dodged. Then another dart fired, not where Barry was, where he would be. Barry's eyes widened. It really was learning. Barry threw himself sideways, the dart grazing his shoulder. Pain flashed. Not deadly, but enough to make his muscles tighten. Scott shouted, "Barry." Barry clenched his jaw. "I'm fine." Jean's voice was strained. "It's collecting data. It wants your pattern." Barry understood in a cold, clear way. This wasn't just an attack. It was a test that could become a blueprint. Barry made a choice in the middle of motion. He could end this faster by going all out, by ripping every machine apart in seconds. But if he did, he would show the world a new nightmare, and the people who hated mutants would build bigger cages. Barry slowed just a little, not because he was weak, because he was thinking. He moved closer to Scott. "We needed to retreat without getting my full speed." Scott's eyes flicked to him, sharp. "You can control that?" Barry nodded. "Yeah, I can, but I need you to make it think it won." Scott understood. His mouth tightened. "I hate that plan." Barry gave him a quick, tense grin. "Me too." Scott shouted, "Fall back, defensive line." It sounded real enough to be recorded. The Sentinel's head lifted. It stepped forward, confident now. Barry moved like he was struggling, like he was tiring. He let the Sentinel's clamp brush his sleeve again, just enough to show it progress. Then Barry feinted right, ran left, and slipped behind the Sentinel's back. He reached into the machine's spine housing and pulled out a small module, thin, sleek, clearly meant to survive. A data core. Barry crushed it. The Sentinel froze for a half-second, like it felt the loss. Then it did something none of them expected. It turned and ran. Not away in panic. Away with purpose. It leapt, thrusters firing, and vanished into the storm clouds like a wounded animal returning to its pack. Ororo's wind tried to pull it down, but it was already gone. Silence fell, broken only by rain. Barry stood in the wet grass, breathing hard. Logan stared at the sky, claws still out. It ran. Beast stepped onto the porch, glasses fogged. It escaped. Jean's voice was small. It learned. Scott looked at Barry, and for the first time there was something in his eyes besides suspicion. Concern. How much did it get? Scott asked. Barry opened his palm. The crushed data core was dust and broken metal. Not enough, Barry said, but his stomach still twisted, because he knew the truth. If that sentinel had escaped with even a little timing data, it was already enough to start building a way to catch a man who ran like lightning. In the distance, sirens wailed. News helicopters would come next. Cameras, narratives, fear. Barry looked at the mansion, at the doors where students had just been rushed inside. He thought about the crowd earlier, calling him a mutant like it was a curse. He thought about what these machines were designed to do. Scott's voice was low. This changes everything. Barry nodded, rain sliding down his mask. Yeah. He glanced up at the clouds where the sentinel had vanished. Somewhere out there, someone was holding a piece of today like a weapon. And now they knew a new word. Anomaly. Barry's lightning flickered once around his hands, then faded as he forced it down. He turned back toward the mansion steps, toward the people who had stood beside him, toward the hard truth of this world. I'm not leaving, Barry said quietly. Not as a promise to them, as a decision he needed to hear from himself. Because if this world was going to build cages big enough to catch storms, then Barry Allen would have to learn how to fight without becoming the excuse. Rain kept falling long after the sentinels were gone. It tapped the windows. It soaked the grass. It ran in thin lines down the stone walls of the mansion like the house was sweating. Barry stood near the front steps with his mask off. His hair was damp and stuck to his forehead. His suit still gave off small sparks when he moved too fast. He watched students hurry inside in tight groups. Some were crying. Some were trying not to cry. Some looked angry in a quiet way that scared Barry more than shouting. He had seen fear before. This was fear that had learned to live here. Beast came down the steps, holding 3 sealed bags in his big blue hands like they were priceless jewels. You saved the relay core, Beast said, almost breathless. Barry blinked. You sound happy. Beast looked offended. Not happy. Interested. There is a difference. Barry let out a short laugh. Sure. Beast lifted one bag. Inside was a piece of smooth purple metal. It still hummed faintly, like it remembered being alive. You labeled it, Beast said. Barry shrugged. Chain of custody. Beast's eyes shined behind his glasses. You wrote the time, location, and you included weather conditions. Barry shrugged again, but his mouth turned up. Habit. Logan walked past them, water dripping off his hair. His claws were gone now, but his face still looked like a fight had started, and he was waiting for it to finish. He glanced at the bag. We're making scrapbooking now? Barry pointed at him. Evidence. Logan snorted. It's a robot. Beast said, very calm. It is a weapon built to hunt children. Logan went quiet. Barry's stomach tightened. He looked toward the doorway where the last of the kids had disappeared. Are they all inside? Barry asked. Beast nodded. All accounted for, no injuries. Barry's shoulders dropped a little, like he had been holding his breath for 10 minutes. Scott came down the steps next, visor still on. He had that same stiff posture, but his voice was lower now, like he was trying to keep the house from hearing how close it had come. Debrief, Scott said. In the war room. Now. Barry started to follow. Scott stopped him with a hand. Barry paused. What? Scott's jaw moved like he was chewing a thought. You did good out there. Barry blinked. The compliment sounded weird coming from him. Thanks, Barry said. Careful. You did too. Scott didn't respond to that. He just turned and walked inside. Barry followed, stepping onto the polished floor, leaving wet footprints behind. He noticed a staff member quickly laying towels down, not angry, just practiced. This place had been attacked before. They just didn't call it that out loud. Inside the war room, the mood was sharp and tight. A map of the property glowed on a screen. Small dots showed where the sentinels had entered. Aurora stood near the map, arms crossed, eyes tired. Jean sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug that was not being drank. Her gaze was unfocused, like she was still hearing echoes. Xavier rolled in quietly. His face was calm, but his eyes carried weight. Beast set the evidence bags down on the table with care. Barry sat last. Scott stood and began without drama. They came here. They were not searching. They were acting on a plan. Ororo's voice was steady. They were too fast for a first strike. Beast tapped the table, and they adapted to Barry within minutes. Everyone looked at Barry. Barry kept his hands flat on the table to show he wasn't hiding anything. "I didn't go full speed," Barry said. Scott's chin lifted slightly. "I noticed." Barry met his gaze. "I did it on purpose." Logan, leaning against the wall, grunted. "Why?" Barry looked down for a moment. "Then back up. Because the moment I go all out, this world gets a new reason to build bigger cages." Jean's eyes flicked to him. Her expression softened, just a little. Ororo studied him like she was weighing a storm. Xavier nodded once, slow. "That is wisdom, Barry." Scott's voice stayed cautious. "Or it's hesitation that gets people killed." Barry's jaw tightened. "I didn't hesitate. I chose." Scott stared at him for a beat. Then he turned toward Beast. "What did we recover?" Beast pushed one bag forward, fragments of an internal relay unit, and this. He pulled out a thin black chip from another bag. It was cracked, but still intact. It fell out of the first Sentinel when Barry removed its power core. Beast said, "It appears to be a storage device." Scott's voice sharpened. "Can you read it?" Beast's smile returned in a way that made Barry nervous. "I can try." Jean's voice was quiet. "There was a signal above us. I felt it." Beast nodded. "A remote link, like someone was watching through the machines." Logan's eyes narrowed. "So it wasn't just a patrol." Ororo's gaze turned hard. "It was a message." Scott said, "A warning." Xavier spoke softly, and the room listened. It was also a test. Barry felt the knot in his chest tighten again. "A test for what?" Barry asked. Jean answered, voice strained. "For you." Barry swallowed. Scott's tone went flat. "And now the world will react." As if to prove him right, a distant thumping began outside. Barry's head turned toward the sound automatically. Helicopters. More than one. They passed overhead like insects, circling. Beast checked a monitor and hissed through his teeth. "News." Ororo's eyes narrowed. "Already." Scott's shoulders tightened. "Of course." Barry looked at Xavier. "They know where you live?" Xavier's face didn't change. "They suspect. They often suspect." Barry stared at him, anger rising hot in his throat. "That's insane." Logan's voice was rough. "Welcome." The war room screen flickered as Beast turned on a live feed. A news anchor stood in front of police tape. Hair perfect. Voice excited in a way that didn't match what had almost happened. Behind him, shaky phone footage played on repeat. The footage showed a giant metal shape, lightning, wind, and a red blur. The anchor said, "Reports confirm a violent mutant incident near a private school." Ororo's jaw clenched. The anchor continued. Witnesses describe a lightning man moving faster than human eyesight. Barry's stomach sank. Scott said, "Turn it off." Beast muted it, but the footage kept looping silently. Barry watched himself on the screen. He looked like a ghost made of red and light. He looked like the exact thing people feared. Jean's voice came tight. "They're going to call you a mutant." Barry forced himself to breathe. "I'm not." Ororo's gaze stayed steady. "To them, that may not matter." Barry looked at the students' photos on the wall behind the screen. Kids smiling, kids training, kids being kids. It mattered here. Xavier's voice cut through the tension. "We will not be drawn into their story." Scott looked at him. "They'll write it anyway." Xavier nodded. "Then we respond with truth, and with restraint." Logan snorted. "Truth doesn't sell." Barry's hands curled into fists. Lightning danced along his knuckles. He forced it back down. "You can't just let them lie," Barry said. Scott's voice was sharp. "We can't chase every camera. We protect the kids first." Barry looked at Scott. "And what about the people out there who will get hurt because of the lie?" Scott held his gaze. "We do both, Barry. but we do it smart. Xavier lifted a hand gently. We will speak with you, Barry, about how to move in public. But first, you must understand something. Barry leaned in, listening. Xavier's tone was calm and heavy. This world has been trained to fear mutants. Many people have lost loved ones to chaos. Many have been taught that difference is danger. Fear does not behave like logic. Barry swallowed. So you just live under it? Ororo answered, voice soft but hard underneath. We resist it. Every day. Logan added, and sometimes we bleed for it. Barry stared at the looping footage again. He hated that he was now part of their story. He hated that his power could make everything worse if he wasn't careful. He hated most of all that someone out there had built those machines on purpose. A knock came at the war room door. A staff member stepped in, pale. Professor, there are officials at the front gate. Scott's face went colder. Already. Xavier's eyes closed for a moment, then opened. I will speak with them. Barry stood fast. I should come. Scott turned on him. No. Barry's jaw clenched. They're here because of me. Scott stepped closer, voice low. They're here because of all of us. Ororo looked at Barry. If you show yourself, you become their headline. Barry froze. Because she was right. Xavier rolled toward the door. Stay here, Henry. Keep working on the device. Scott, secure the students. Ororo, monitor the skies. He paused at the door and looked back at Barry. His eyes were kind, but firm. And Barry, Xavier said. Do not run. Not yet. Barry swallowed. Okay. Xavier left. The room felt smaller without him. Barry forced himself to sit again. He watched Scott begin issuing orders in quick, clean sentences. Barry wanted to do something. Anything. Standing still felt like losing. Jean's chair scraped as she stood. She walked closer to Barry, slow and careful, like she didn't want to startle him. You're feeling trapped, Jean said. Barry let out a breath. Yeah. Jean tilted her head. You don't like waiting. Barry gave a humorless smile. I'm a speedster. Waiting is basically my weakness. Jean's mouth twitched. Not true. Your weakness is caring too much. Barry looked at her, surprised. Jean's eyes held his. You can feel all the ways things can go wrong, and you want to stop all of them. Barry's throat tightened. Is that bad? Jean looked away for a moment, toward the muted screen. Not bad, just dangerous. For you. Barry stared at his hands. He thought of the bullet earlier, the falling barrier, the stampede, the sentinel aiming at students. He thought of how easy it would be to run away from this world, and how impossible it would be to live with himself if he did. I'm not leaving, Barry said again, softer this time. Jean nodded, like she already knew. Outside, somewhere near the front gate, voices rose. Angry, demanding. Then Xavier's voice, calm and steady, like a wall built out of kindness. Barry couldn't hear the words, but he could feel the tension through the floor. Logan pushed off the wall and headed for the door. Scott snapped, Logan, stay. Logan didn't stop. I'm staying. I'm just getting closer. Scott didn't argue. He didn't have to. Logan moved like a threat that protected the house. Beast was already moving toward the lab with the cracked data chip. Barry followed him into the hallway without thinking. Beast glanced back. Should you be here? Barry nodded. If I'm going to help, I need to know what we're up against. Beast studied him for a second, then nodded once. Very well, but do not touch my equipment. Barry lifted both hands. I promise nothing, but I'll try. Beast snorted and led him into the lab. The lab smelled like clean metal and chemicals. Machines hummed, screens glowed. Beast placed the cracked chip into a reader. The screen filled with scrambled code. Beast's fingers danced across keys. Come on! Come on! Barry hovered behind him, restless. Beast said, If this is encrypted. The screen flashed. A folder appeared. Beast froze. Barry leaned closer. What is it? Beast spoke slowly, like he didn't trust his own eyes. A label. The folder name was simple. It made Barry's stomach drop anyway. Tomorrow Protocol. Under that label were dates. Not today's date. Future dates. Barry's skin prickled. Beast whispered, "This is not just a hunting program." Jean appeared in the doorway, eyes wide, like she had felt the shift even without seeing the screen. "I felt that," she said. Beast clicked the folder. A single file opened. The screen showed a blurred image. A city skyline in ruins. Giant machines in the smoke. Small figures running in the shadows, hunted. A line of text below it. Mutant extinction event. Probability rises with anomaly presence. Barry's mouth went dry. "That's us." Jean's voice tightened. "It's a future." Beast's hands trembled slightly. He steadied them. Or a prediction of one. Barry stared at the words. Probability rises with anomaly presence. He knew exactly what that meant. It meant that someone out there was ready to use him. Not just to catch him. To blame him. To make him the excuse. A soft metallic sound came from the air behind them. Barry spun. A small coin rolled across the lab floor, spinning in place like it had been thrown with impossible precision. It stopped at Barry's boot. Barry blinked. "Okay, that's new." A voice came from the lab speakers. Smooth, controlled. "I dislike waste," the voice said, "so I will not waste time." Beast's eyes widened. "How did you—" The screens flickered. A symbol appeared on every monitor at once. A sharp, angular M shape made of metal lines. Barry's heart rate jumped. Jean's face went pale. "Eric." The voice continued, calm as ice. "Barry Allen." Barry froze. He looked at Jean. "Do you guys just have a list of my name somewhere?" Jean didn't answer. She looked angry and worried. The voice said, "You do not belong here, but you are here." Barry stepped closer to the speaker, jaw set. "Who are you?" A pause. Then the voice spoke like it expected Barry to already know the answer. "I am Magneto." Beast swallowed. Aurora appeared behind Jean, eyes hard. Barry held up a hand, as if that could slow down the conversation. "Okay. Hi, I'm Barry." Magneto ignored the greeting. "I have watched your footage," Magneto said. "You move like a weapon that cannot be aimed." Barry's jaw clenched. "I'm not a weapon." Magneto's voice sharpened. "In this world, they will make you one." Barry glanced at the screen again. "Tomorrow protocol, extinction event." Magneto continued. "They have built machines to end us. They are not confused. They are not afraid. They are certain." Barry's fists clenched. "Then why don't you stop them?" A low, humorless chuckle came through the speakers. "Oh, I intend to." Jean's voice cut in tight. "Eric, don't." Magneto's tone softened slightly when he spoke to Jean. "Hello, Jean." Then it went cold again. "Tell Charles that polite words will not stop metal." Aurora said sharp, "You always choose war." Magneto replied, "I choose survival." Then his focus returned to Barry. "Speed man," Magneto said. "You can do something none of us can. You can end threats before they grow." Barry's mind raced. He could hear the temptation in Magneto's words. End threats before they grow. It sounded like saving people. But it could also mean destroying anyone who might become a threat. Barry swallowed. "That's not how I do things." Magneto's voice turned hard. "Then you will learn how this world punishes softness." Barry leaned toward the speaker. "Or maybe you'll learn there's a difference between softness and restraint." Silence. Then Magneto spoke again, quieter. "You have spirit." Barry did not relax. Magneto continued, "If you change your mind, come to me. I will not treat you like an accident." The screens flickered again. The symbol vanished. The lab lights steadied. Beast exhaled like he had been holding his breath for minutes. Jean's hands shook slightly at her sides. She clenched them into fists. Barry stared at the Tomorrow Protocol file. Magneto was right about one thing. This world would not let Barry stay neutral. He looked at Beast. "Can we copy this?" Beast nodded fast. "Yes." Barry looked at Jean. "Can you find where it came from? The signal?" Jean's eyes narrowed, focusing. "Maybe. It's buried deep." Barry looked toward the hallway. toward where Xavier was dealing with officials and lies. He felt that familiar urge to sprint, to solve the whole problem in 10 seconds. But he didn't. He forced himself to stand and think. "Okay," Barry said, voice low. "We don't wait. We investigate." Ororo's gaze sharpened. "With care." Barry nodded. "With care." Jean looked at him. "You're really staying?" Barry's mouth tightened. "Yeah." He stared at the words on the screen again. Probability rises with anomaly presence. He spoke to no one and everyone at once. "Then I'm going to change the probability." By nightfall, the mansion felt like a place holding its breath. The helicopters were gone, but drones buzzed in the distance like mosquitoes that refused to leave. The officials had left the front gate with angry promises. Xavier had returned to the house looking calm, but his hands were tense on his chair's arms. Dinner happened in small pockets of quiet, like people were afraid to talk too loudly and wake the next attack. Barry didn't eat much. He didn't even complain about it, which was how Beast knew something was wrong. Later, in the lab, Beast pushed a tray of food toward him anyway. Barry stared at it. "I'm good." Beast raised an eyebrow. "That is untrue." Barry sighed and took a bite just to stop the conversation. Beast didn't push more. He simply slid a small notebook toward Barry. "What is this?" Barry asked. Beast's eyes glittered. "Your obsession, given a proper home." Barry opened it. It was a log. Time, location, object, notes. Barry blinked. "You made me an evidence notebook." Beast leaned back, proud. "You were using sticky notes. It was chaos." Barry laughed, short and real this time. "Okay, that's fair." He flipped to the next page. Beast had already written at the top in neat handwriting. Case, Sentinel Incursion, Anomaly Event. Barry looked up. "You're really leaning into it." Beast tapped the pen against his chin. "If there is a mystery, we solve it. That is what we do." Barry nodded slowly. That simple sentence hit him harder than it should have, because it felt like home. In his world, he had a lab, a case board, a team, people who believed in truth, even when truth was hard. Here, the truth could get you hunted, and they still chased it anyway. Scott entered the lab without knocking. Barry looked up. "Hey." Scott didn't respond with small talk. "Xavier wants you briefed." Barry's stomach tightened. "About what?" Scott's voice was clipped. "Public pressure, government pressure, and what happens if they come back with more machines?" Barry nodded. "Okay." Scott's gaze flicked to the Tomorrow Protocol files open on a side screen. "You found something," Scott said. Beast nodded. "A predictive program, and future dates." Scott's jaw tightened. "So they're planning ahead," Barry said. "They're planning to blame me." Scott didn't deny it. "They're planning to control the narrative." Barry leaned forward. "Then we need proof. Hard proof. Something we can show that links the machines to a specific group." Scott nodded once. "Agreed." Barry blinked. "Wait, we're agreeing?" Scott's mouth twitched like that was uncomfortable. "Don't get used to it." Barry couldn't help it. "I won't." Jean stepped into the lab next, eyes tired. "I found a thread in the signal." Barry sat up. "Where?" Jean pointed at a map on the screen. "Not a clean location, more like a path. It bounces." Beast's fingers flew across keys, signal relays, like hidden mirrors. Ororo entered quietly behind Jean. "Where does it end?" Jean hesitated. "Near the city. Industrial area. A place with old metal and new security." Scott's voice was sharp. "Trask." Beast's ears perked. "Trask Industries?" Scott nodded. "Public face, private work." Barry frowned. "Who's Trask?" Ororo's tone turned bitter. "A name tied to machines like the ones that came here." Logan appeared in the doorway, as if the word Trask had summoned him. "We hit it," Logan said. Scott looked at him. "No, we gather intel first." Logan's eyes narrowed. "While they build more?" Scott's voice stayed firm. "While we do it smart." Barry raised a hand between them. "Okay, here's my thing. Everyone looked at him. Barry spoke slowly, choosing each word. I can go in and out fast. I can map the place. I can take pictures. I can grab documents. I can do it without anyone even knowing I was there. Scott's gaze sharpened, and if they have sensors keyed to your frequency, Barry's stomach tightened. Beast's voice was gentle but serious. They may. Barry nodded. Then I don't do it alone. Logan grunted approval. Scott's voice stayed cautious. We don't rush. We plan. Barry leaned forward. Planning is fine, but we can't wait weeks. Jean said, quiet. They're scared. They'll strike again. Ororo's eyes hardened. Then we move soon. Scott looked at Xavier, who had entered without Barry noticing. Xavier's face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. We will not charge into a trap, Xavier said, but we will not hide either. Barry looked at him. I can help find the proof. Xavier nodded. Yes. Scott's voice was low. We move tonight. Small team. Logan smiled like a wolf. Beast muttered, I will prepare equipment. Barry stood. And I'll... Scott cut him off. You'll listen. Barry stared at him for a second. Then Barry nodded once. Okay. It wasn't surrender. It was respect for the fact that Scott had been fighting this war longer than Barry had been alive in this world. Barry grabbed his new notebook and shoved it into a side pouch. Beast frowned. You're taking that, Barry said always. Jean looked at the notebook, then at Barry. You're really doing chain of custody on a secret mission. Barry gave her a small grin. I'm consistent. Jean's lips twitched. That might be your actual superpower. They didn't take the jet. Too loud. Too traceable. Instead, Ororo created heavy cloud cover far away, drawing attention to the wrong place. Scott chose a ground route with careful turns and a plan for every minute. Logan moved ahead like a shadow. Jean rode with Ororo, quiet, eyes half closed, feeling the city's mental noise like a storm of thoughts. Barry sat in the back seat, vibrating slightly with the urge to run. He forced himself not to, because Scott had said listen, and because for once, Barry wanted to prove he could be patient. They reached the industrial zone after midnight. Tall fences, cameras on poles, bright lights that made the night look white. A giant sign read Trask Industries. Barry stared at it. They put their name on it? Scott's voice was flat. They want you to know. Ororo's gaze was hard. They want you to feel helpless. Barry's jaw clenched. Bad choice. Scott pointed. No quips. Barry exhaled. Right. Sorry. They moved. Logan slipped over the fence first, quiet as breath. Ororo created a wind shift that made the cameras sway just enough to throw off their angles. Jean closed her eyes and reached outward, not reading minds deeply, but listening for alertness. Guards, dogs, drones. 2 guards by the west door, Jean whispered. One is half asleep, one is nervous. Scott nodded. He moved like a soldier, precise and calm. Barry watched them all and felt something strange. Respect. Not for their power, for their restraint. Barry could solve this with speed. But speed wasn't the point. The point was proof. Barry whispered, let me do the inside run. Scott's voice was low. We go together. You go first. We follow. Barry nodded. He took one breath. He moved. To Barry, the world slowed just enough for him to slip between camera sweeps. He phased through a fence panel without leaving a hole. He landed behind a stack of crates and listened. Footsteps, radios, a guard's cough. Barry was inside the perimeter in seconds. He walked the last few feet at normal speed, forcing himself not to be a blur. He reached a side door, locked with a keypad and a metal card reader. Barry stared at it like it was a puzzle. Beast would love this. Barry pulled a small tool from his pouch, something Beast had insisted on giving him, along with 5 warnings. Barry popped the casing and exposed wires. His fingers hovered. Then he stopped. He could just short it and open it. But that would leave a mark. Instead, he took out a tiny camera and snapped pictures of the wiring first. Scott's voice crackled softly in his ear. What's taking so long? Barry whispered. Evidence. Scott's pause was loud. Then, very quietly, fine. Hurry. Barry smiled to himself and rewired the keypad cleanly. The door clicked open. Barry slipped inside. The interior smelled like cold metal and new paint. Hallways stretched in neat lines, security doors, badge scanners, motion sensors. Barry's skin prickled. This place felt built for secrets. He moved down the corridor, light on his feet. He found a security room and phased through the door just enough to slip in. Inside were monitors showing camera feeds. Barry took pictures of everything. He found a folder on a desk labeled Night Operations. He snapped that too. Then he moved deeper. In the center of the facility was a lab, big enough to hold a small airplane. In the middle of it stood something that made Barry's stomach drop. A machine. Not as tall as the Sentinels from before, but shaped like a person. Sleek, compact. Built for speed. Built to chase. Its face was smooth and blank except for 2 narrow eye slits. Barry felt the knot in his chest tighten like it recognized a threat. He whispered, "Okay, that's new." Scott's voice came tight. "What do you see?" Barry took one more careful step and looked at the label on the platform. Nimrod Prototype, Phase 1. Barry swallowed. "Something I don't like." Jean's voice came faint. "I can feel it. It's cold." Ororo's voice was low. "We leave. We bring proof. We do not fight here." Barry nodded even though they couldn't see him. He looked around for computers. A terminal sat on a nearby desk, logged in. Barry moved to it, heart pounding. On the screen was a menu. Project. Tomorrow Protocol. Barry's blood ran cold. He plugged in a small drive Beast had given him. He began copying files. The progress bar moved slowly. Barry clenched his jaw. "Come on. Come on." A soft beep sounded behind him. Barry froze. The Nimrod unit's eyes lit up. Not bright, just awake. Barry's heart slammed. He whispered, "No." Scott's voice snapped in his ear. "Barry? What's happening?" Barry didn't answer, because the machine stepped off the platform. It moved like it already knew how. It turned its head toward Barry. Then it spoke in a flat voice. Anomaly detected. Barry's skin prickled. It knew him. It took one step. Barry's instincts screamed to run, but the drive was still copying. Barry forced himself to stay. He took a slow breath. He raised his hands, palms open, like that could somehow calm a murder robot. "Hi," Barry said under his breath. "Let's not do this." The machine moved faster. Not flash fast, but too fast for comfort. Barry felt something else too. Sensors in the walls waking up. Cameras focusing. Alarms waiting to scream. Scott's voice was sharp. "Barry, leave now." Barry glanced at the screen. The copy was at 70%. Barry's jaw clenched. If he left now, they'd lose the proof. If he stayed, the whole team could get trapped. The Nimrod unit lunged. Barry moved. He blurred sideways just enough to dodge. The Nimrod's hand slammed into the desk, crushing metal like paper. Barry's eyes widened. Strong, too. He snapped, "Copy faster," like the computer could hear him. Jean's voice in his ear was tight. "Barry, it's about to trigger a full alert. I can feel people waking up." Ororo said, "We must go." Barry gritted his teeth. The Nimrod turned again, tracking him smoothly. It wasn't guessing. It was predicting. Barry felt a chill. This was what the Sentinels were becoming. A machine that could learn speed. The copy hit 90%. Barry's body trembled with the urge to end it right now. He could shatter the machine. He could tear it apart. But that would set off alarms and bring every guard and drone on them. Barry made a third choice. He ran in a tight circle around the Nimrod. Not full speed, but enough to kick up a sudden pressure wave. The wave hit the terminal. The desk shook. The drive clicked out. Barry snatched it the instant it ejected. He didn't even look at the copy status. He just grabbed it and moved. He raced for the door, phasing through a locked security gate in the hallway like it wasn't there. He met Scott and the others at a side corridor where Logan had already taken down 2 guards silently. Scott saw the drive in Barry's hand. "Did you get it?" Barry's voice was tight. "Most of it." Jean's eyes widened. "It woke up." Barry nodded. "It woke up." Ororo's face hardened. "Then we leave now." They moved as a unit. Barry took the rear, watching for pursuit. Logan took point, sniffing air like he could smell cameras. Scott stayed centered, directing with small hand signals. Jean's eyes stayed half closed, feeling minds and machines. Ororo guided wind through the vents to muffle footsteps and blur sound sensors. They were almost out when the facility lights snapped red. A siren began to scream. The alarms weren't loud at first. They were controlled. Then they got louder, like the building itself was yelling. A voice boomed over speakers. "Containment breach. Lockdown active." Doors slammed shut ahead of them. Metal shutters dropped. They were trapped in a corridor with no clear exit. Scott's voice snapped. "Alternate route. Now." Barry stepped forward. "I can phase us through." Scott's eyes narrowed. "All of us?" Barry nodded. "If I take it slow." Jean's gaze tightened. Slow is not an option right now. Footsteps thundered in the distance. Guards. Many. And something heavier. Something with clean, even steps. The Nimrod. Barry swallowed. He pressed a hand to the wall. He focused. He felt the wrongness in the speed force, like a radio with static. He pushed anyway. "Okay," Barry whispered. "Stay close to me. Don't fight it." Ororo moved to his side. Scott grabbed Ororo's arm lightly, steadying the line. Jean stepped in close, eyes locked on Barry like she was anchoring her mind. Logan growled, "If we die in a wall, I'm haunting you." Barry gave a tight smile. "Fair." He vibrated. The wall softened. For a moment, it felt like stepping into cold water. Then they were through. They stumbled into a storage space on the other side, gasping. Barry's knees nearly buckled. Scott grabbed his shoulder. "You good?" Barry nodded quickly, though his chest hurt. "Yeah. Just don't ask me to do that 10 times. Aurora's voice was sharp. "We still need an exit." Jean's eyes widened. Above. Barry looked up. A ceiling hatch. He moved fast, popped it open, and boosted Logan up first. Logan landed above with a grunt and reached down. Scott climbed next, then Jean, then Ororo. Barry went last. As Barry pulled himself up, the door below exploded inward. The Nimrod stepped through smoke like it belonged there. Its eyes locked onto Barry. "Anomaly confirmed," it said. Barry's heart hammered. He climbed out and slammed the hatch shut. Logan's claws went through the metal, ripping it. "Move!" They ran across catwalks and pipes, high above the factory floor. Below, guards poured into the corridors. Nimrod moved faster than the guards, cutting them off like they weren't even part of the same plan. Barry could hear it beneath them, tracking. It wasn't just chasing. It was learning their pattern. Scott pointed. "Roof exit." Ororo called wind, bending smoke away from them. Jean pushed fear out of their minds in small bursts, just enough to keep them steady. Logan moved like a bullet in the dark. Barry ran beside Scott and kept glancing down. The Nimrod reached the catwalk supports, looked up, and then jumped. It landed on the catwalk behind them with a heavy clang. The metal shook. Jean gasped. Scott spun and fired. His blast hit the Nimrod square in the chest. The Nimrod slid back 2 feet, sparks flying. Then it straightened as if the blast had only been data. Ororo called lightning. The bolt hit the Nimrod's shoulder. The Nimrod systems flickered. It kept moving. Logan rushed in, claws slashing. Metal cut. Sparks burst. Nimrod caught Logan's wrist mid-swing. Logan snarled and pushed harder. Nimrod twisted and threw Logan into a railing. Logan hit hard, then rose again instantly, angry. Barry's body surged forward. He could end this. He could tear its head off. But he saw the cameras in the rafters turning toward them. He saw the red recording lights. This was what they wanted. Footage, proof that mutants and anomalies were violent. Scott's voice snapped. Barry. Barry realized Scott wasn't calling him to attack. Scott was calling him to save Logan. Barry moved. He grabbed Logan mid-fall and set him back on his feet in one smooth motion. Then Barry ran past the Nimrod and struck its knee joint with a burst of speed steel. The Nimrod's movement slowed for a heartbeat. Not stopped. Just slowed enough. Ororo used that heartbeat. She blasted wind into the Nimrod's balance point. It tipped. Jean shoved with telekinesis, pinning it into the catwalk rail. Scott fired again, hitting the same spot, over and over, forcing the metal to bend and lock. The Nimrod strained. Its voice stayed flat. Adaptive response. Barry cut it off by phasing his hand into its backplate and ripping out a small module. Not the whole power core, just the tracking unit. He crushed it. The Nimrod froze for half a second. Then it jerked like it had been blinded. That was all they needed. Go, Scott yelled. They sprinted. They burst through a rooftop hatch into cold night air. Ororo immediately whipped wind around them, pushing away the facility's rooftop lights and cameras. They ran across rooftops, leaping gaps. Barry held back his full speed so he didn't leave the team behind. Finally, they reached a shadowed block where their vehicle waited. They piled in. Scott drove. Ororo watched the skies. Jean pressed a hand to her temple, breathing hard. Logan sat silent, blood already drying on his knuckles. Barry clutched the drive in his fist like it was a lifeline. Behind them, Trask Industries blared with alarms. Somewhere inside, a machine had learned their names. And the worst part was simple. It had called Barry one thing over and over. Anomaly. Morning came with no kindness. The news didn't just report what happened. It shaped it. Barry stood in a hallway outside the war room and watched a screen as a reporter pointed at the Trask building from a distance. The headline read, "Break-in at Trask, mutant terror cell suspected." Barry's jaw tightened so hard his teeth hurt. A second headline flashed below it. "Lightning Man tied to Xavier School?" Barry turned away from the screen like it burned. Scott passed him, visor off, face drawn tight. "We expected this." Barry snapped. "It's still wrong." Scott stopped. "Yes." That single word surprised Barry more than the lie on the screen. Scott continued, voice low. "You want to fix it fast. I get it. But the truth doesn't always win on day one." Barry stared at him. "So what do we do?" Scott's gaze held his. "We keep people safe. We gather proof. We choose the right moment to expose it." Barry swallowed. Because that sounded like a plan. A slow plan. And Barry hated slow plans. But he could also feel the weight of it. This wasn't a bank robbery. This was a whole world's fear. Barry nodded once. "Okay." Scott walked away. Barry followed into the war room. Beast had the drive plugged in and was already building a file tree. Photos, blueprints, internal memos, security logs. Beast looked up, eyes wide and intense. "We got enough." Barry exhaled hard. "Good." Jean stood near the corner, eyes distant. Not all of it copied, but enough to know what they're building. Ororo's gaze was hard, and enough to know they will build it anyway. Xavier rolled in. "Not if we stop them." Logan grunted. "We didn't stop them last time." Xavier didn't argue. He looked at the files. Beast pulled up one document. This appears to be a timeline projection. The screen showed charts and dates. It wasn't just tomorrow protocol. It was a whole ladder of plans. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. Each phase came with a threat list. Mutant categories, response types, and then a new category that made Barry's stomach turn. Anomaly. Speed field entity. Barry leaned closer. Speed field. Beast's voice was quiet. "They are naming your power." Barry swallowed. "So they can build a cage for it." Jean's eyes narrowed. "It's not only a cage. It's a story. They want the world to think they're saving people from you." Ororo's voice turned bitter. "And from us." Xavier's face remained calm, but his eyes darkened. "This is why they came here. They wanted a public test. Now they want a public excuse." Barry stared at the words until they blurred. Then he spoke, voice low. "I can feel something. In those files." Beast blinked. "What do you mean?" Barry pressed his palm to the table, as if touching the paper through the screen could help. "The speed force," Barry said. "It's tugging. Like it's reacting to a future that shouldn't exist." Jean stiffened. "I felt that too. A kind of echo." Scott looked from Barry to Jean. "You're saying there's a real future tied to this?" Barry nodded slowly. "Or a path toward one. And the more they build, the louder it gets." Xavier's gaze sharpened. "Can you follow it?" Barry hesitated, because he knew what that meant. Pushing into the speed force, risking time, risking becoming the exact thing he feared. A man who thought he could fix everything alone. Ororo watched him carefully. Barry met her eyes. "If I do it controlled. I don't rewrite time. I just look." Scott's voice was sharp. "Looking is never just looking." Barry nodded. "I know." Xavier spoke gently. "If you do this, you do it with us. Not alone." Barry swallowed. "Okay." They prepared like it was surgery. Beast cleared a section of the lab and covered the floor with sensors. Jean placed mental anchors in the room, like invisible ropes that could pull Barry's focus back if he drifted too far. Ororo set the air pressure steady, keeping the room calm. Scott stood with arms crossed, ready to shout, "Stop," if Barry pushed too hard. Logan stood by the door, arms folded, eyes locked on Barry, like he was guarding everyone from everyone. Barry stood in the center. He closed his eyes. He listened. The speed force didn't roar. It crackled weakly, like a fire trying to start with damp wood. Barry breathed slow. He pictured the Tomorrow Protocol files. He pictured the ruined skyline. He pictured a future where kids in this house ran for their lives every day. Barry's chest tightened. He began to vibrate. Lightning flickered around his feet, crawling across the floor in thin lines. Beast's sensors spiked. Jean's face tightened with effort. Ororo's eyes narrowed, focused. Barry opened his eyes. For a moment, the lab looked normal. Then it didn't. The edges of the room stretched like rubber. Time thinned. Sound dulled. Barry felt himself step into a place between seconds. He wasn't running on a road anymore. He was running on a feeling. A thread. A thin, bright thread pulled tight toward a dark horizon. Barry followed it. The world snapped. He was standing in a city street. But it wasn't the same city. Smoke covered the sky. Buildings were burned open like broken teeth. Metal footsteps echoed from far away, slow and certain. Barry's breath hitched. He turned. Across the street, a giant sentinel stood like a tower. Not purple and clumsy like before. This one was sleek. Sharp. Its eyes were narrow. Behind it, more machines moved like a pack. Barry's heart pounded. He didn't hear people. Then he did. Small, terrified breathing from a collapsed doorway. Barry crouched and looked inside. A woman was there. Older, dirt on her face, eyes sharp even in fear. She looked at Barry like she had been waiting for him. Her voice was hoarse. "You're not supposed to be here." Barry blinked. "Who are you?" She swallowed, fighting panic. "Someone who has seen tomorrow." Metal footsteps got closer. The woman grabbed Barry's wrist, surprisingly strong. "Listen, if you try to fix this alone, if you try to outrun it, you become the spark." Barry's throat tightened. "What spark?" Her eyes flicked up toward the machines. "They build around you. They blame you. They use you." Barry's stomach turned. "They already are." She nodded, fast. "Then don't give them the story they want." A shadow fell over the doorway. The sleek sentinel's face appeared, filling the broken frame. Its voice was smooth and cold. Speedfield entity detected. Barry's blood ran cold. It knew him here too. Barry grabbed the woman's hand. "Come with me." She shook her head hard. "No. You can't save everyone this way." Barry's chest hurt. "I have to try." The woman's gaze softened for a split second. "Then try the hard way, the slow way, the way with people." The sentinel reached in. Barry moved on instinct. He grabbed the woman, then stopped. He felt something snap. Not in the world. In him. This wasn't real time. This was an echo. If he pulled her, he might pull the whole echo with him. He might tear a bigger hole. Barry released her hand. It felt like swallowing glass. "I'm sorry," Barry whispered. The woman gave a small, sad nod. "Good." Barry turned and ran. Not away from the future. Toward the thread. Toward the lab. The world snapped again. Barry stumbled back into the mansion lab, gasping, sweat on his skin like he'd run a marathon. Jean grabbed his shoulders, grounding him. Barry, look at me." Barry blinked. "I saw it." Beast's voice shook. "What did you see?" Barry swallowed hard. "A future where they win." Scott's face went pale under his controlled anger. "How?" Barry stared at the floor, breathing hard. "Because fear wins, because people let it, because the machines get smarter, and because—" He clenched his jaw. "Because they build the story around me." Ororo's voice was steady. "And what did you learn?" Barry swallowed. "If I try to fix it alone, I become the excuse." Jean's eyes shined with something like pain. "That's true." Xavier's voice was gentle. "Then we do not let you stand alone." Before Barry could respond, the mansion alarms buzzed again. Not the full siren from last night. A different tone. Beast checked a monitor and frowned. "Not sentinels." Jean's head lifted, listening. Her eyes widened. "It's metal moving. A lot of it." Ororo's face hardened. "Eric." Scott's voice turned sharp. "Where?" Jean pointed at a map. "Downtown. A detention facility. They're holding mutants." Logan's claws slid out with a snap. "He's hitting a cage." Barry's stomach tightened. He remembered the word Magneto had used. Survival. Barry looked at Xavier. "If Magneto attacks, the city will panic." Xavier's face was calm, but his eyes were urgent. "Yes." Scott already had his visor on. "We move." Ororo's wind rose in the room, ready. Jean's hands trembled, then steadied. Logan smiled like a fight was a language he finally got to speak. Barry stood, heart pounding. He looked down at his notebook on the table. He grabbed it. Beast stared. "Now?" Barry said. "Always." And they ran. The detention facility looked like a fortress. Tall concrete walls, floodlights, barbed wire. Police vehicles surrounded it. And above it all, metal was rising into the air like the building was being peeled open. Cars lifted off the street and floated, spinning in a slow orbit. Street signs bent like soft plastic. A police helicopter tried to fly closer. Its blades suddenly warped. The helicopter pulled back fast. Barry's skin prickled. He could feel the raw control in the air. Ororo landed first, wind pushing smoke and dust away so they could see. Scott landed beside her, stance wide, visor glowing. Jean stepped down next, eyes scanning the mines below. Logan dropped like a stone and rolled into a crouch, already hunting. Barry arrived last, forcing himself not to look like a missile. He stood with the team and stared at the chaos. Then Magneto appeared. He floated above the front gate like he owned the sky. His cape moved in the wind like a flag. His helmet hid most of his face, but his voice carried clearly. "Release them," Magneto commanded. A loudspeaker crackled from inside the facility. "Stand down, this is a lawful holding center." Metal screamed. The loudspeaker tore off the wall and crumpled into a ball. Magneto's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "There is no law that makes cages moral," Magneto said. Barry swallowed. He hated the violence, but he understood the anger. Scott stepped forward, voice amplified by his own certainty. "Eric, stop. You're escalating this." Magneto turned his head toward Scott, like Scott was a child trying to lecture a storm. "Scott Summers," Magneto said, "you guard a door that is already burning." Ororo rose slightly into the air, eyes sharp. "You're putting lives at risk." Magneto's gaze flicked to her, as are they. Jean's face tightened. "Eric, there are people inside who are afraid. Guards, too." Magneto's voice went colder. Then, the guards should open the gates and walk away. Barry stepped forward without thinking. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He just spoke like a man trying to stop a car crash. "Magneto," Barry called. "If you crush this place, they'll use it against mutants forever." Magneto's head turned slowly. He looked at Barry, and for a moment, Barry felt like an ant being studied by a lion. "Speed, man," Magneto said. "You speak of forever as if you understand it." Barry's jaw tightened. "I understand consequences." Magneto's voice sharpened. "Then understand this. Those inside are children, families, people taken from their homes." Barry took a step closer. "Then free them. Don't make a massacre." Magneto's eyes narrowed behind the helmet. "You are brave." Barry didn't flinch. "I'm trying to be useful." Magneto lifted a hand. The front gate groaned as metal buckled. The gate didn't shatter outward. It folded open cleanly, like a door made by force. Inside, sirens screamed. Guards shouted. People ran. Jean's face tightened. Panic. Everywhere. Ororo's wind swept across the yard, pushing dust down, clearing sight lines. Scott's voice snapped. "X-Men, move. Protect civilians. No lethal force." Barry vanished. He became motion across the yard, guiding people away from stampedes, catching falling debris, pulling a child out of a doorway before a metal beam slammed down. He heard screams. He heard sobs. He heard a guard yelling, "They're escaping!" He didn't have time to judge who deserved what. He only had time to stop people from dying. Logan grabbed a guard's rifle and snapped it in half like a stick, then shoved the guard behind cover. "Stay down," Logan growled. "If you die, I gotta feel bad, and I hate that." The guard stared, confused and terrified. Ororo dropped rain in controlled sheets, turning open yard into slick ground so gunfire lines were harder to hold. Scott fired blasts not at people, but at walls and watchtowers, disabling angles and forcing guns away from crowds. Jean pushed calming pressure through clusters of frightened minds, not erasing fear, just keeping it from turning into a deadly stampede. Then the real problem arrived. Not from Magneto. From above. A sleek shape dropped from the clouds with a clean, controlled descent. Metal body, narrow eyes. Nimrod. Barry's blood ran cold. It landed between the escaping mutants and the open gate like it was a wall built to say no. Its voice was flat and loud. Mutant escape event. Containment required. Magneto's head turned sharply. He recognized the threat too. For a half second, Magneto's expression shifted not fear, but disgust. "They sent it here," Magneto said. Scott's voice tightened. "Everyone back!" Nimrod's eyes flicked. They locked. Not on Magneto. Not on Scott. On Barry's red blur. "Anomaly confirmed," Nimrod said. Barry's stomach dropped. It didn't just want mutants. It wanted him. Barry heard a guard shout, "Shoot it!" Bullets hit Nimrod and bounced off like rain. Nimrod raised its hand. A net launched out, wide and fast. Barry moved. He dodged, then another net fired where he would be. Barry's eyes widened. It was doing it again. Prediction. Barry shifted tactics instantly. He stopped being a straight line. He became a question mark. He ran up a wall, then down, then sideways, changing timing on purpose. Nimrod adjusted. It stepped forward, fast. Not flash fast, but fast enough that it could reach normal people before Barry could move them all. Barry realized the trap. If he focused on Nimrod, people would get hurt behind him. If he focused on people, Nimrod would catch him. Jean's voice came through the chaos, strained. "Barry, it's locked on you. It's using you as the center point." Ororo shouted, "Scott!" Scott snapped back. "I see it." Scott turned his body slightly, visor aimed at Nimrod's legs. "Ororo, freeze the ground under it." Ororo's wind whipped cold air down. Rain turned to sleet in one tight circle. The ground under Nimrod iced over. Nimrod's foot slipped just a fraction. Scott fired. His blast hit Nimrod's hip joint and shoved it sideways. Nimrod recovered instantly, planting its hand on the ground like a gymnast and flipping back upright. Barry's eyes widened again. It was built for this. Magneto lifted both hands. Every metal bar and fence post in the area rose into the air like spears. They shot toward Nimrod in a storm. Nimrod's body shifted. Panels moved. Magneto's spears slammed into it. Some stuck. Some bounced. Nimrod's eyes flickered. It didn't fall. It turned its head toward Magneto for the first time. "High threat mutant detected," Nimrod said. Magneto's voice was sharp. "Yes." Then Magneto clenched his fists. The spears twisted. They tried to tear Nimrod apart from inside. Nimrod's body pulsed. A field burst outward. The spears shot away like they had been slapped. Magneto's eyes narrowed. For the first time, the air around him felt like he was meeting a wall, not a door. Barry moved in, fast and careful. He didn't attack Nimrod's chest. He went for the back again, like at Trask. He phased his hand into the armor and searched for the tracking module. Nimrod turned its head too smoothly. Its hand snapped back and caught Barry's wrist. Pain flashed again, the same power-damping pulse. Barry's speed stuttered. Barry's eyes widened. Nimrod pulled. Not hard enough to rip Barry's arm off. Hard enough to hold him. It spoke calmly, like it had already solved him. Capture achieved. Barry clenched his teeth. He could feel the speed force sputtering. He could feel the urge to go full power and break free. But if he exploded into full speed here, in front of cameras, in front of terrified people, it would be the excuse they wanted. Barry forced his breathing steady. He looked past Nimrod at the crowd. He saw a mutant teen in handcuffs stumbling, terrified. He saw a guard aiming at that teen out of panic. Barry made a decision. He didn't pull away. He didn't fight the grip. He used the grip. He vibrated his arm in Nimrod's grasp, not to escape, but to send a ripple through the machine's hand. The ripple made Nimrod's sensors glitch for half a second. John felt the opening. She slammed telekinesis into Nimrod's elbow joint, forcing it to bend the wrong way. Aurora blasted wind into Nimrod's face, disrupting its visual tracking. Scott fired a narrow blast at the exact clamp on Barry's wrist. The clamp shattered. Barry ripped free. He vanished. Not to attack. To save. He snatched the handcuffed teen away from the guard's aim, setting him behind a concrete barrier. He whispered, "Breathe. You're safe." Then he returned to the fight. Logan lunged in, claws out, and slashed Nimrod's knee joint. Sparks burst. Nimrod kicked Logan hard enough to send him sliding. Logan hit the ground, dug claws into concrete, and stopped himself. He rose again, angry, unbroken. Magneto lifted a hand and ripped a metal support beam from the facility wall, swinging it like a bat. He slammed it into Nimrod. Nimrod skidded. It recovered. It always recovered. Barry's heart hammered. They weren't winning. Not cleanly. Not fast. This was what the future had felt like. A machine that didn't get tired. A machine that didn't panic. A machine that learned. Barry looked at Scott. Scott met his eyes for a split second. Scott's gaze said everything without words. We don't have to destroy it, we just have to stop it from controlling the moment. Barry nodded. Barry became a blur around Nimrod's feet. Not striking, but moving debris. Shifting angles, forcing Nimrod to keep recalculating. Aurora increased the wind, making every small movement cost Nimrod more balance. Jean pushed a mental fog into nearby guards and civilians, enough to keep them from charging into the fight, enough to keep the fight contained. Scott fired in bursts, driving Nimrod away from the crowd. Magneto added pressure like a giant hand, bending metal around Nimrod, building a cage not for a person, but for a machine. Nimrod fought the cage, systems pulsing. It raised its arm toward Barry again, tracking him through the blur. Barry realized the truth. As long as Barry was here, Nimrod would keep adapting. It would record. It would learn. Barry couldn't let it take more. Barry did something that felt wrong. He stopped moving for 1 second. He stood still in the open. Nimrod's head snapped toward him instantly. Its eyes narrowed. Barry held up his hands, palms out. "Yeah," Barry muttered. "Come on, look at me." Nimrod fired a capture net. Barry moved at the last instant, but not away. Through, he phased into the net's center where the energy was strongest, letting it pass through his vibrating body. Then he reached forward and grabbed the net's projector in Nimrod's wrist. He ripped it out. He crushed it. Nimrod's arm jerked. Before it could adjust, Barry phased his other hand into Nimrod's backplate and found what he needed. A small, thin unit. A recorder. A tracker. Barry tore it out. He didn't crush it. He looked at it for half a second. Then he did something very Barry Allen. He pulled out his notebook with his free hand, slapped the tracker into an evidence bag he had stuffed into his pouch, sealed it, and wrote, "Nimrod Track Unit, removed during detention facility event. Time, 9:14. Aurora's voice cut through the chaos. Half shock, half anger. "Barry!" Barry yelled back. "Evidence!" Logan snarled. "You're insane!" Barry shouted, "I know!" Then he threw the bag to Beast, who had arrived at the edge of the fight with a stunned expression, catching it like his life depended on it. Nimrod's eyes flickered. Without the tracker, its prediction slowed for a beat. That beat was enough. Magneto clenched his fists. Metal wrapped around Nimrod's torso, pinning its arms. Scott fired into the joints, locking them. Ororo froze the metal shell with sudden cold, making it brittle. Jean slammed telekinesis into the pinned machine, driving it backward into the facility wall. The wall cracked. Nimrod pushed. It was still strong, but it was no longer clean. It was no longer calm. Its voice stuttered. Adaptive response. Then it did the most dangerous thing. It stopped trying to win the fight. It turned its head toward the crowd, and it spoke loud enough for every camera. Mutant terrorists aided by speed anomaly. Public safety compromised. Barry's blood ran cold. It wasn't just hunting. It was talking. It was writing the story out loud. Scott's face tightened with fury. "Shut it up." Barry moved. He blurred to Nimrod's head, phased 2 fingers into its speaker housing, and snapped the unit. The voice cut off mid-sentence. Nimrod's eyes narrowed. Then it made a final choice. Its body pulsed. A burst of energy shot outward. Metal restraints flew off. Scott and Aurora were pushed back. Jean stumbled, catching herself. Magneto's cape snapped in the blast. Nimrod launched upward in a clean jump, boosters flaring. It rose into the sky like a knife thrown straight up. Aurora tried to pull it down with wind. Magneto tried to clamp it with metal. Nimrod adjusted, slipped, and vanished into the clouds. It escaped. Again. A terrible quiet fell over the yard. Mutants were still running out of the facility. Guards were still shouting. Cameras still pointed at everything. Magneto hovered above the open gate, chest rising and falling slowly. He looked down at the freed people. Then he looked at Scott, Ororo, Jean. Then his gaze found Barry. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to just them. Magneto spoke, voice low but carrying. "You see now." Barry's jaw clenched. "I see a machine that talks propaganda." Magneto's eyes narrowed. "And you see that Charles's way is too slow." Barry shook his head. "No. I see that your way gives them more fear to sell." Magneto's expression sharpened, like he respected the argument even while hating it. "You removed its tracker," Magneto said. Barry held up his empty hand. "So it can't learn as much." Magneto's voice was quiet. "You think like a strategist." Barry swallowed. "I'm trying." Magneto floated closer, just a little, like he was stepping into a conversation the others couldn't interrupt. "You could end this faster with me," Magneto said. Scott's voice snapped. "Eric, don't." Magneto didn't even look at Scott. His focus stayed on Barry. "You could take their leaders before they speak," Magneto said. "You could remove the hands that build cages." Barry's stomach turned. Because he could. He could do it. And it would be easy. That was what scared him. Barry looked up at Magneto and spoke clearly. "I'm not going to become a weapon to fix your war." Magneto's eyes hardened. Then you will become their excuse anyway. Barry's voice didn't shake. Then I'll fight the excuse too. Magneto stared at him for a long beat. Then he gave a small nod. Not approval. Acknowledgement. Very well, Magneto said. Choose your harder road. He turned away and raised his hands again. Metal gates and doors peeled open farther, clearing a path for the freed mutants. He did not crush the building. He did not kill the guards. He simply opened the cage and left it broken. Then Magneto rose into the air and vanished into the clouds like a dark thought. Ororo exhaled slowly. Jean's shoulders sagged. Scott's jaw stayed tight, but his voice was controlled. Medical team. Now, get the freed people somewhere safe. Logan wiped blood off his knuckles and looked up at Barry. That machine said your name. Barry swallowed. It didn't say my name. It said anomaly. Logan's eyes narrowed. Same thing to them. Barry looked at the crowd, at the cameras, at the fear and the hope tangled together. He felt the weight of the future echo again, like a distant siren only he could hear. He realized something simple and brutal. This universe didn't care what Barry called himself. It cared what he represented. And now everyone, humans, mutants, villains, machines, had seen him in the center of the storm. Barry turned toward Scott and Xavier as they arrived at the edge of the chaos. Xavier's face was calm, but his eyes were full of worry. Scott looked exhausted and angry. Barry held up the empty evidence bag from his pouch, like it was a flag of his own strange kind of war. We got a Nimrod tracker, Barry said. And we have Trask files. And we have proof they're planning for tomorrow. Xavier's voice was soft. And we have today. Barry nodded. He looked up at the sky where Nimrod had escaped. He didn't feel helpless. He felt hunted. And that was different. Barry's voice dropped to a whisper only he could hear. Okay, he said. So now it's personal. He didn't mean revenge. He meant responsibility. Because in this world, the fight wasn't just about winning battles. It was about stopping the future from becoming normal. 3 weeks later, the mansion had a new kind of rhythm. Not calm, not safe, but practiced. Barry learned the sound of the school waking up. He learned the soft thuds of training mats in the gym. He learned which doors stuck in the winter air. He learned which kids smiled wide when they lied and said they were fine. He also learned the sound of fear living under normal life. It was in the way students checked windows twice. It was in the way teachers paused when a helicopter passed too low. It was in the way everyone in the house listened when the security system made any noise at all. Barry tried to help in the ways he knew best. Every morning, he ran the perimeter. Not a full-speed lap around the state, just a tight sweep around the grounds, checking fences, checking sensors, checking blind spots. He did it like a case, like a crime scene that might happen later. Then he went to the lab. Beast had given him a corner of a table and a box of supplies that Barry treated like treasure. Evidence bags, labels, markers, gloves, a camera. Beast pretended to be annoyed, but he kept refilling the box. Scott called it Barry's tiny police station. The students called it the bag wall, because Barry had hung a neat row of bagged metal fragments from previous Sentinel encounters, each one labeled with time, place, and notes. One morning, a teen named Jubilee wandered into the lab, eyes bright and curious. She pointed at a bag and read the label out loud. Shirt button, unknown origin, found during roof escape, possible guard uniform. Barry nodded seriously. Could matter. Jubilee squinted at him. That's a button. Barry leaned in like he was sharing a secret. It's always the small stuff. Beast cleared his throat. Please do not encourage him. Barry smiled. Too late. He trained too, when he could. Not to get stronger. He was already fast enough to break most things by accident. He trained to get cleaner, more controlled. Scott ran drills where Barry had to move people out of danger without anyone feeling a tug. Ororo taught him how wind and weather could hide movement from cameras. Jean helped him learn how to keep his thoughts calm, because stress made his lightning flare. Logan did not teach him anything. Logan just watched. Barry didn't mind. He'd been watched before. The outside world didn't relax during those weeks. It got sharper. There were more patrols near known mutant neighborhoods, more security bills on the news, more talk show hosts saying the same word over and over. Threat. And every time a blurry clip of the red lightning man appeared, the fear spiked again. Barry didn't show his face in public, not because he was ashamed, because the story out there was hungry. It didn't want his truth. It wanted its own. But the machines didn't stop. They changed. The next Sentinel encounter happened 2 towns over, and it didn't storm a street like a giant monster. It waited. It watched from the sky, hidden behind clouds, and deployed small drones that tracked patterns. Barry and the X-Men stopped it fast, and nobody died. But the message was clear. The enemy had learned patience too. That night, Barry stood alone in the lab, staring at a map Beast had drawn on the wall. Red dots marked Sentinel sightings. Blue dots marked drone signals. Yellow lines showed how the signals bounced between relays. The pattern was not random. It was a web. Someone was building a net across the state. Barry rubbed his face. "Okay," he whispered. "Where's the spider?" A quiet beep came from the computer behind him. Barry turned. The screen showed a new message. No sender listed. No normal channel. Just a line of text. "You want to go home." Barry's stomach tightened. He didn't touch the keyboard. He didn't answer. The next line appeared anyway. "I can open the door." Barry stared, pulse rising. Another line. "Come alone." Midnight. The old planetarium. Barry's mind raced through options. Trap, ambush, fake, real. Then a final line appeared. Barry Allen. Forensics. Central City. Barry went cold. Nobody here should know those words. Barry backed away from the computer like it might bite him. The lab door opened. Scott stepped in, face tired, eyes sharp. He took one look at Barry's expression and knew something had changed. "What happened?" Scott asked. Barry swallowed. "Someone just invited me to a meeting." Scott's jaw tightened. "Who?" Barry hesitated, then told the truth. "I don't know. But they know my name. They know my job. They know my city." Scott stared at him, anger and worry mixing. "You're not going." Barry's voice stayed steady. "I might have to." Scott stepped closer. "No. This is how you get captured. This is how they split you from the team." Barry held up a hand. "I'm not going alone." Scott's eyes narrowed. "Good." Barry exhaled. "But I also think this could be the person behind the web, or one of them." Scott didn't like it. Barry could see that clearly. Scott also wasn't a coward. "Tell Xavier," Scott said. Barry nodded. "Yeah." He did. Xavier listened without flinching. Then he asked one simple question. "Barry," Xavier said gently, "what do you want most?" Barry's throat tightened. "My home," Barry admitted. "And to not be the reason this world gets worse." Xavier nodded. "Then we will walk carefully. Together." The old planetarium sat on a hill outside the city. Half closed down, lights off, parking lot cracked. It looked forgotten, but the wind around it felt wrong. Ororo sensed it first. She lifted her chin slightly as they approached, eyes narrowing. "Someone is controlling the air," she said softly. "Not like me. Different." Scott's voice was low. "Positions." Logan vanished into the shadows without another word. Jean stayed close to Scott, eyes half closed, feeling minds like heat sources. Barry stood beside Xavier's wheelchair, hands flexing. They hadn't brought the whole team. Too many people would be seen. Too many would turn the night into a headline. Barry hated that. He also understood it now. He walked up the steps to the planetarium door. It opened before he touched it. Inside, the room was dark except for faint blue lights along the floor. The big dome ceiling loomed overhead like a sleeping sky. A voice spoke from the darkness, smooth as silk. "Barry Allen," it said. "You came. How sensible." Barry's skin prickled. "Show yourself." A figure stepped into a dim cone of light. Pale skin, perfect posture, a smile that looked practiced. red diamond on the forehead like a cruel joke. Jean's breath caught. Scott's stance tightened. Logan's growl came from the shadows like a warning. "Mr. Sinister," Scott said, voice full of disgust. Barry's stomach sank. "Okay, that name sounds bad." Sinister smiled wider. "It is a brand." Barry kept his voice flat. "You know who I am." Sinister paced slowly, hands behind his back like a teacher in a classroom. "Of course I do. You are not subtle. Lightning, motion, an energy field that does not belong. A gift delivered to my doorstep by the universe itself." Barry's fists clenched. "You're connected to the machines." Sinister tilted his head. "Connected? That is such an innocent word." Jean's voice was tight. "What do you want?" Sinister looked at Jean with polite interest. "Ah, Jean Grey. Still carrying a son inside your skull. How charming." Scott's jaw clenched. "Enough." Sinister finally looked back at Barry. "What I want," he said, "is simple. You want to go home. I want access." Barry's eyes narrowed. "Access to what?" Sinister spread his hands. "Your speed force. Your speed field. Whatever name you prefer. A sample. A thread. A drop." Barry's stomach turned. "No." Sinister didn't react like he was offended. He reacted like he expected the first answer to be no. "So quick," Sinister said. "You should listen to the whole offer." Barry's voice was hard. "You said you can open the door." Sinister nodded. "I can. Your friend Beast is clever, but he is working from the outside. I work from the inside." Barry swallowed. "How?" Sinister lifted a small device from his pocket. It was like a ring of metal and glass, humming softly. Barry felt the speed force in his chest twitch, like it recognized the shape of a doorway. Sinister watched Barry's reaction with delight. "See? Your body knows." Barry forced himself to breathe. Scott's voice was sharp. "That device is a trap." Sinister smiled at Scott. "Everything is a trap to you, Summers. How exhausting." Xavier's voice cut in, calm and clear. "Nathaniel Essex, you are offering what Barry desires in exchange for what you desire." Sinister's smile stayed fixed. "Yes," Xavier continued, "and you will use what you take to harm others." Sinister shrugged lightly. "Harm is such a dramatic word. I prefer progress." Barry's chest tightened. "You also know about my past." Sinister's eyes glittered. "Oh yes, the grief, the guilt, the temptation to fix what cannot be fixed." Barry went still. He didn't speak of that out loud. Not here. Not now. Sinister stepped closer, voice lower, almost intimate. "I can do more than send you home, Barry Allen. I can send you to a moment you miss." John's face went pale. Scott's voice turned dangerous. "Don't." Barry felt like the air had been punched out of him. He saw it in his mind without wanting to. A life he wished had gone differently. A moment he wished he could erase. His lightning flickered along his arms. Sinister watched it like it was art. "You could run to the past," Sinister whispered. "I can make it safe, controlled, no paradox, no mess." Barry's hands trembled. This was the hook. Not just home. Relief. Barry stared at Sinister and forced his voice to stay simple. "You don't care about my past. You care about owning my power." Sinister's smile didn't fade. Owning is also a dramatic word. Barry took one step forward. Scott tensed, ready to pull him back. Barry didn't rush. He didn't blur. He walked like a man choosing his words. "I've learned something here," Barry said. "In my world, I tried to fix pain by running faster than it. It didn't work. It just made the pain follow me." Sinister's eyes narrowed slightly, like he didn't enjoy the direction this was going. Barry continued, voice steady. "I'm not making deals with someone who treats people like parts." Sinister's smile sharpened. "Then you will stay trapped in this world. Forever." Barry shook his head. "Maybe, but I won't be your tool." Sinister sighed like Barry had disappointed him in a boring way. "Pity," Sinister said. The lights in the planetarium snapped brighter. The floor hummed. Barry felt the speed force in his chest stutter again. A field rose around him like a cage made of invisible pressure. Jean gasped. "Barry." Barry tried to move. His legs felt heavy. Not weak. Restrained. Sinister's voice became bright and delighted. "Capture, then. I did warn you not to waste my time." Scott fired instantly. His optic blast slammed into the floor near Sinister, cracking tiles and forcing Sinister to step back. Ororo's wind roared into the room, scattering dust and throwing off the lights. Jean pushed telekinesis into the field around Barry, trying to pry it open. Logan lunged from the shadows toward Sinister. Sinister didn't panic. He raised a hand. Metal shutters slammed down between him and Logan like guillotine doors. Logan's claws tore into them, sparks flying. Barry gritted his teeth. The field was keyed to him, to his frequency. Sinister had learned. Barry closed his eyes for one heartbeat and did the one thing Sinister didn't expect. He slowed his own vibration. He didn't fight the cage by pushing harder. He changed his rhythm. The speed force flickered, then caught a new pattern. The field hesitated, confused. That was enough. Jean's telekinesis pried a seam open. Barry exploded into motion, not outward, not wild, but through the seam like slipping through a crack in a door. He was free. He appeared behind Sinister, hand raised. He could end this. One strike. One high-speed hit to the head. Done. Barry stopped. He felt Scott's eyes on him. Jean's fear. Xavier's calm. Barry took the ring device from Sinister's hand instead, so fast Sinister didn't even feel it leave. Then Barry moved back to the team in a blur. Sinister's smile vanished for the first time. "Give that back," Sinister snapped. Barry held up the device. No. Ororo's wind surged again, pushing Sinister's cape back, forcing him to stagger. Scott fired a tight blast into the floor by Sinister's feet, cracking the surface and knocking him off balance. Logan finally ripped through the shutter and charged. Sinister backed away, furious now, but still controlled. He tapped something on his wrist. A hidden door opened behind him. Sinister stepped into it, eyes locked on Barry with hate and hunger. "This is not over," Sinister said. "You cannot outrun me forever." Barry's voice was sharp. "Watch me." Sinister vanished into the dark corridor. The door slammed shut. Barry tried to phase through it, but the wall's energy shimmer told him it was protected by the same kind of tech that had trapped him. Scott grabbed Barry's shoulder. "Let him go." Barry's jaw tightened. "He'll keep building." Xavier's voice was calm. "Yes, but now we have something valuable." Barry looked down at the ring device in his hand. It hummed softly, like a doorway that wanted to open. Beast's voice crackled in Barry's ear from the comm. "Barry, do you have it?" Barry exhaled. "Yeah." Beast sounded almost giddy. "Bring it home. Carefully." Barry stared at the device, then at the dark corridor where Sinister had fled. Sinister had just offered him everything he wanted. Barry had refused. His hand still trembled, not from fear of Sinister, but from fear of himself. Because part of him had wanted to say yes. He hated that. He also understood it. Jean stepped closer, eyes soft. "You did the right thing." Barry swallowed. "Yeah, but it still felt hard." Jean nodded. "That's how you know." Scott looked toward the door. "Now we move. We don't let them spin this into another lie." Xavier's gaze focused. "Agreed." Barry tightened his grip on the device. He didn't know if it could send him home, but he knew it could help them find the spider. And this time, he wasn't going to run at the web alone. The next day, Beast confirmed what Barry already suspected. The ring device wasn't just a door, it was a key. It carried a signature that matched parts of the Tomorrow Protocol network. It linked to hidden relays, hidden servers, a core facility that wasn't Trask's public building at all. A place built under an old rail yard, masked by legal paperwork and security contracts. Scott stood in the war room, finger on the map. "If we take out the core, the drone net goes blind." Ororo's voice was steady. "And if we do it publicly and cleanly, we change the story." Jean looked tired. They'll still call us terrorists. Xavier nodded. Some will. But proof matters. It gives people a choice. Logan grunted. I hate choices. Barry looked at the map, lightning flickering in his stomach. Not out of fear. Out of focus. We go in, Barry said. We get the master files. We shut down the prediction engine and we get everyone out. Scott nodded. And we do not kill. Logan rolled his eyes. I'll try. Scott shot him a look. Logan shrugged like a man who'd made that promise before and meant it as much as he could. They moved at night again. This time, they brought cameras of their own, hard drives, evidence kits, backup transmitters. Barry carried a shoulder bag full of supplies like a weird superhero mailman. Logan stared at it. You brought your baggies. Barry said, always. Logan shook his head. You're a problem. They entered through a maintenance tunnel. Ororo guided wind into vents to blur sound sensors. Jean kept a pressure on nearby guards' minds, not controlling them, just nudging them away from certain corridors, like steering people away from a puddle. Scott led. Barry stayed slightly behind him, watching, learning. They found the server room like a heartbeat under the ground. Rows of black towers, red lights, cooling fans, cables thick as arms running into the floor. On the far wall was a screen showing a live map. Red dots, blue dots, yellow lines. The web. Barry felt sick. Start copying, Scott said. Beast wasn't here physically. He was on comms, guiding them. Barry, left rack, third column. That's the core mirror. Barry moved. He didn't blur. He walked fast, controlled. He plugged in drives. He photographed serial numbers. He snapped pictures of contract sheets taped to the wall. He labeled everything as he went. Scott muttered, You're documenting during an infiltration. Barry whispered back, Yes. Scott exhaled sharply through his nose, but he didn't argue. On the main screen, a new box appeared. Anomaly presence confirmed. Barry froze. Jean's head snapped up. They know. Ororo's voice went tight. Wind shift, someone opened an access door above. Logan growled. Company. Footsteps approached in the corridor. Not guards. Heavier. Even. Too even. Barry's stomach tightened. Nimrod. Scott's voice was sharp. Copy what you can. Barry. Prep shutdown. Barry's hands moved faster. He followed Beast's instructions, tracing cables, finding the power controls, locating the program's live nodes. A screen flickered on one server. A line of text appeared like a message from a mouth with no lips. Hello, anomaly. Barry's blood ran cold. A second line. You have been very educational. Jean's voice trembled. It's talking through the system. Ororo's eyes narrowed. It's here. The corridor door at the far end of the room slid open. Nimrod stepped in. Sleek, clean, narrow eyes glowing. It didn't rush. It walked like it owned time. Containment required, Nimrod said. Scott stepped forward, visor aimed. Not tonight. Nimrod's head tilted slightly. Mutant terrorists present. Speed anomaly present. Probability of public safety compromise high. Barry's jaw clenched. Shut up. Nimrod's eyes locked onto Barry. Anomaly target, priority 1. Barry felt the familiar trap closing. If he fought Nimrod directly, it would learn more. If he didn't, it would hurt the team and escape again. Barry glanced at the main screen. The web was live. The story engine was live. Barry made the choice the outline of his new life demanded. He didn't become the fastest punch. He became the fastest proof. Barry moved. He didn't attack Nimrod first. He sprinted past it, phasing through the airspace beside its shoulder, and slammed his hand into the main server trunk line behind it. He vibrated and ripped the cable harness free. Sparks burst. The web map flickered. Nimrod turned instantly, arm snapping toward Barry. Scott fired. His blast hit Nimrod's forearm mid-swing, knocking the arm wide. Ororo slammed wind into Nimrod's legs, forcing it to anchor. Jean shoved telekinesis into Nimrod's joints, trying to lock it in place. Logan charged, claws out, going for the same knee joint again. Nimrod adapted fast, but it had to split attention. Barry used that. He raced along the server wall, pulling key modules in a pattern Beast had given him. He bagged one, labeled it, threw it into his shoulder bag. Logan shouted over the noise, "You are bagging your way through the apocalypse." Barry yelled back, "Yes." Nimrod's voice sharpened. Data theft detected. Countermeasure. Barry slammed his palm onto the shutdown panel. A red button blinked. He hesitated for one heartbeat. Shutting it down would end the web here. It would also trigger backup protocols. It might wipe evidence. Barry's mind raced. Then he remembered Xavier's voice. Truth gives people a choice. Barry didn't press the button. He did something else. He pulled the panel open and rerouted the system's output to the transmitter Beast had asked for. He made the system speak before it died. The server room screens changed. Contracts, names, payment trails, project timelines, tomorrow protocol, mutant extinction event projections, Trask signatures, private security orders, and a line that made Scott's face go pale. Authorization, Bastion oversight node active. Jean's breath caught. Bastion. Ororo's eyes hardened. So the spider has a name. Nimrod lunged, faster now, sensing the danger of exposure. It grabbed Barry's wrist again, power-damping pulse firing. Barry's speed stuttered. Pain flashed. Barry gritted his teeth and forced his free hand to keep moving. He hit the final transmit command. The files shot out through the transmitter, bouncing to every safe outlet Beast had prepared. News feeds, independent servers, public drops, anything that could hold the truth long enough for people to see it. Nimrod tightened its grip. Stop. Barry stared straight at its glowing eyes. No. Jean hit Nimrod's arm with a telekinetic shove that finally broke its hold. Barry ripped free. Scott shouted, "Now, Barry!" Barry slammed the shutdown. The server room lights flickered. Fans died. The web map vanished. The room fell into a heavy silence, like the whole underground facility had just lost its heartbeat. Nimrod froze for a fraction of a second. Not dead. Confused. Its voice stuttered. Network. Impaired. Ororo used that fraction. She called lightning through the ventilation shafts. The bolt hit Nimrod's back, making its systems flicker. Scott fired into Nimrod's legs, forcing it to kneel. Logan drove claws into the floor and used them like anchors, yanking Nimrod's balance off. Nimrod slammed a hand down, trying to push them away. Barry moved behind it, found the tracking unit again, and tore it out. He crushed it this time. Nimrod's eyes narrowed. Loss. Recorded. Barry's voice was hard. No, it isn't. Because it couldn't record anymore. Alarms screamed. Not because the web was live. Because the facility was now in emergency mode. They had minutes before guards flooded in. Scott pointed. Exit now. They moved. Barry took the evidence bag from his shoulder bag and shoved it into Jean's hands. Hold this. Jean blinked. You're still doing chain of custody. Barry nodded. Always. They ran through tunnels, up ladders, out into cold night air near the rail yard. Behind them, lights snapped on. Vehicles started. People shouted. But the web didn't light up again. The sky above them stayed empty of drones. For the first time in weeks, it felt like the enemy had lost a layer of sight. They reached the vehicle and piled in. Scott drove. Ororo watched the sky. Logan sat with arms crossed, breathing hard. Jean stared at the evidence bag like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Barry leaned his head back against the seat and closed his eyes. His hands were shaking. Not from speed, from the choice. He had wanted to smash Nimrod, to end it, to make sure it never stood up again. Instead, he'd chosen proof and shut down and escape. He'd chosen the slow fight. He wasn't sure if it would work. Then Beast's voice crackled through the comm, almost laughing with relief. It's out, Beast said. Barry, it's out. People are seeing it. Barry opened his eyes. They are? Beast sounded breathless. Yes, it's spreading. They can't stop it fast enough. Scott didn't smile. He didn't relax. But his shoulders loosened by a fraction. That changes the board, Scott said. Aurora whispered. Hope changes the board. Barry stared out the window at the dark road. He didn't feel victorious. He felt steady. Like for once he'd used his speed to build something instead of break something. And in the distance, far behind them, a single drone rose into the sky, blind, searching, and late. A week after the rail yard, the world didn't become kind. It became noisy. The leaked files didn't magically erase fear, but they cracked the clean story people had been sold. Some news channels called the documents fake. Others demanded investigations. Protesters showed up outside Trask buildings with signs that now read different words. Not our children. No more cages. Government officials argued on camera. Some condemned the X-Men. Some condemned the program. And in the middle of all that noise was a simple, ugly truth. Enough people had seen enough proof to hesitate. Hesitation mattered. At the mansion, Xavier held a meeting with the older students. He spoke clearly. No big speeches. The world will still fear you, he said. But fear is not the same as certainty. Today, certainty took a wound. Barry watched from the back of the room. He saw students who had looked hopeless weeks ago now sitting a little straighter. He saw others still shaking. He saw a boy in the front row staring at Barry with wide eyes. After the meeting, the boy walked up to Barry, nervous. "You're the lightning guy," the boy said. Barry blinked. Yeah." The boy swallowed. "Are you a mutant?" Barry crouched slightly so they were closer in height. "No," Barry said simply. "I'm something else. I'm from another world." The boy's eyes widened, like Barry had just said he was from the moon. Barry smiled gently. "I know. It sounds crazy." The boy whispered. "So, you can leave." Barry's smile faded a little. He looked around at the mansion, at the halls that had become familiar, at the people who had stood beside him, at the kids who had to live here even when he didn't. "Someday," Barry said. "But not yet." The boy nodded slowly, like he understood more than Barry expected. Then he asked, "Why are you staying?" Barry thought about it. The easy answer was duty. The true answer was simpler. "Because you shouldn't have to do this alone," Barry said. The boy blinked fast, then turned and ran off like he was embarrassed to feel anything. Barry stood and exhaled. On the far side of the room, Logan watched him. Logan's face didn't change much, it never did, but his eyes softened by a fraction. "Not bad," Logan muttered. Barry glanced at him. "Is that a compliment?" Logan shrugged. "Don't get used to it." Barry smiled. "I won't." Outside, in a place far from the mansion, a sleek machine stood in a dark hangar, eyes dim. Nimrod was not destroyed. It was repaired. It was quieter now, smarter, and somewhere deeper than metal and code, a new line had been written into its logic. Truth event. Unexpected variable. Beside it, in the shadows, a presence watched. Not human, not fully machine. A voice without a face spoke softly. "Adjust," it said. And Nimrod's eyes lit again. Morning came clean and cold. Barry ran the perimeter again, boots tapping the path like a heartbeat. He didn't do it to escape his thoughts. He did it to keep the place safe. He passed the training yard and saw students practicing. Scott was out there, arms crossed, correcting stances, voice firm but not cruel. Aurora stood nearby, guiding wind for a student learning to control a small storm around their hands. Jean sat on a bench, watching, calm, eyes present. Beast waved at Barry from a window, holding up a fresh box of evidence bags like a joke and a gift at the same time. Barry slowed to a stop near the edge of the yard. He watched for a moment. He felt the knot in his chest, the wrongness in the speed force still there. But it wasn't choking him today. It was just a reminder. Home was still out there. So was the fight. Xavier rolled up beside him quietly. "You run often," Xavier said. Barry smiled faintly. "Occupational hazard." Xavier's voice was gentle. "And how do you feel?" Barry looked out at the yard again, then up at the sky. He chose honest words, simple ones. "Still scared," Barry said. "Still angry sometimes. Still tempted, if I'm being real." Xavier nodded. "Temptation does not make you evil. What you do with it matters." Barry swallowed. "I almost took Sinister's offer." Xavier didn't look shocked. "And you didn't." Barry's jaw tightened. "Because it was wrong." Xavier's eyes softened. "Because it would have made you less than you are." Barry exhaled slowly. He reached into a pouch and pulled out a small folded note. He had written it the night after the rail yard, when his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He had kept it close since. Barry unfolded it and read it silently. Then he handed it to Xavier. Xavier read it and smiled gently. On the note, Barry had written one line in simple block letters: "Don't fix fear with force." Barry took the note back, folded it, and tucked it away again like armor. He looked at the students, then at Xavier. "I can't outrun this world's hate," Barry said softly. "Not really." Xavier nodded. "No." Barry's eyes hardened with quiet resolve. "But I can help people stand up to it." Xavier's smile was small and proud. "Yes." Barry turned and started walking back toward the mansion. Not running. Walking. Choosing the pace on purpose. Behind him, the training yard continued. Ahead of him, the house waited. And somewhere far away, machines were still being built. But for now, Barry Allen stepped inside. Not as an accident, not as a rumor, not as an excuse. As a steady hand in a world that needed one.